Raider! Oakland, LA, Oakland, Vegas, Raider Nation, wherever, forever! You got your old Uncle Mosh and Raiders Fan Radio from Murph's Fan Cave, taking a lighter journey into the dark side. Sit back, put your feet up, pop a top, and enjoy the ride. Here we go!
Look left, look right, Bolitnikov, a leaping pass, touchdown!
We miss you, we love you, and we'll see you in the Hall of Fame.
When you have great coaches, then after you have great coaches, you get great players. You have a great organization, and you tell them one thing: just win, baby.
Way up the middle, intercepted Filipiano at the 50, time running down, Oakland football, and I think Oakland victory.
The Oakland Raiders have scored on the most zany, unbelievable, absolutely impossible dream of a play. Well, I love this team. I think this team can win.
What is up, Raider Nation? Your old buddy Murph back once again for what I hope to be a fantastic episode of Raiders Fan Radio. That's right, back here in Murph's Fan Cave. It is episode number 119. Every time I say that, and it's in the 100s, it always trips me out. But anyways, number 119 of Raiders Fan Radio. Appreciate everybody joining us live on the YouTubes, and thank you to all of you that are joining us out there in podcast land. There is no disembodied, belly-laughing co-host for us today. I am doing what I refer to as the dreaded podcast selfie. That's right. I'm going solo tonight through Raiders Fan Radio. And there's only one reason why I would even do this. Back in the old days, I would have never even considered it. But nowadays, with the live stream and with YouTube and with the chat, it doesn't feel like I'm just sitting here talking to myself. So it's great to have everybody that's already jumped in the chat tonight. Chris Potts, Coach Randy Hansen. What's up, Coach? Sam Acosta, Aaron the Q-Dog Raider, Ron the Wrench, the Mater Raider, Alexander Stockton, Chevy Raider, Lizette Ramiro, Raider Rich, Roach is in there, Joseph Duran, Mojo Raider, a whole bunch of you in there, and we always support yours. We appreciate your support of Raiders Fan Radio and appreciate you joining me here tonight. So I'll go ahead and switch the camera over there, and you can see it's empty. It's just the empty 32 chair over there, and where Uncle Mosh would normally be. So you have to put up with just me tonight. This really is going to be a quick show. I wanted to do this for a couple of reasons. We're going to skip kind of some of the bigger news stories. You guys know what the news is. And we're going to skip some of the normal segments that we've been doing here lately. But there's a few things that I wanted to get to you tonight. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to jump on here and do this podcast selfie. So number one is that I had an interview yesterday with Raiders reporter Scott Winter. And for those of you that have listened to our show for any significant amount of time, you know that Scott's been a long time fixture and reporter, what am I trying to say? Like a guest, and has made many appearances here on Raiders Fan Radio. And Scott was gracious with his time yesterday, and it's an hour-long interview. So, and that's after being edited up and everything. So, for those of you on the YouTube, you're not going to be able to hear that. You're going to have to go back and listen to the podcast version of that. Those of you that are on the podcast, that will come up for you here very shortly. But for those of you on the YouTube, definitely go check it out. It's great, and we get in the weeds on everything. For those of you that like it when we dig in on players and specifics of players and, specifics of what the Raiders, their projected moves may be in the draft and in free agency and what's going to influence those decisions and all that. We are way in the weeds on all that stuff. So I think you're going to definitely enjoy that conversation with Scott Winter. And so I wanted to bring that to you this week. And then also there's a few other things that I want to hit this week for sure. Sea of Fans mailbag, as always, is our favorite part of the show. We had some Sea of Fans left over from last week we couldn't get to, and we had a bunch this week, so I thought we would do this podcast selfie so we could get those all out there as well. So again, we're kind of in this together, just you and me tonight, so I hope that's okay. I want to hit a couple of things before we get to the contact information. First and foremost, we've started this new venture with NFLshop.com. There's a link in the description. So if you're going to buy stuff from NFLshop.com, whether it's a New Era hat or you're going to get a new jersey or whatever else you're going to buy from NFL Shop, please hit that link and go and buy through there for whatever it is that you're going to get. And a portion of what you buy, a portion of that gets kicked back to us, and we're going to take that money and donate it. And we're not quite pinned down on what charity we're going to do yet, but we're close. I've reached out to a few different ones and gotten some interesting responses, nothing concrete yet. And so once we kind of land on that, then we'll let you know. But just know that anything you do, anything that you buy, any of that money that comes back to us, we're gonna give it away. And we're gonna appreciate you all in advance for supporting us that way. Also, for those of you, a couple of you have mentioned already, the new shirt. So the Get Made Raiders Fan Radio T-shirt, those are going to be out very soon, and we'll have those for sale on our website. And again, same thing. After we cover our costs on things, and we're going to give all the money away. So definitely appreciate you all for supporting the show in the way that you do. Thank you for those of you in the chat room tonight, and I look forward to a quick little episode of Raiders Fan Radio here. And let's go ahead and get started. Well, now I got to find. See, I got Uncle March's board over here, and I got to figure out where the stuff is. Okay, here it is.
All right, boys and girls, pay attention. You got your old Uncle Mosh here with an update. That's right. I got some stuff for you. Take out a piece of paper, a pencil, a pen. Heck, use your pocket knife and carve the info into your dashboard as you're driving down the highway. First off, you need to like us on our fan page on Facebook. That's right. Go to Facebook at Raiders Fan Radio Podcast. Don't forget about the Twitter. You know your old Uncle Mosh, he twits now. That's right. Go to at Raiders Fan Radio. Also, don't forget the Instagram at Raiders Fan Radio. Or what about our website? That's right, RaidersFanRadio.com. Heck, if you want to, you can even email us, show at RaidersFanRadio.com, or call us on the Raiders Fan Radio hotline, 909-345-3346. That's 909-345-3346. Don't forget Merv's Fan Cave on the YouTube, where you can get all the show links like the Fan Club Blitz with Splatterhead and Fitz. Find all our stuff on podcast providers like Stitcher, iTunes, and Google Play. All right, did I hit the time limit? Good.
All right. Thank you, Uncle Mosh. Appreciate that contact information there. And all right. So thank you again to those of you joining us here for episode 119 of Raiders Fan Radio. So, we always name our show we always draw significance back to the show number based on something that is Raider related. And so for this week, so we're episode number 119. So it was a little bit on the nose, but we're going to have one last one in 2019. So one more for 19. That's right. The Raiders, as you all know, have announced at least an agreement in principle to play the next 2019 season back at the Oakland Coliseum, which I think we can all agree that's where they belong. All of these other, scenarios that have been thrown out there are fun to think about. And I think it was certainly interesting to explore the concepts. But at the end of the day, they are the Oakland Raiders to us and always will be until the day that they're not, when they become the Las Vegas Raiders. So I think we can all agree that it's going to be great to see them back in Oakland. And, originally I thought I was done. I went to the opening game last year to the Monday Nighter week one, and I thought, well, that was going to be it. That was my last shot to go and sit in the black hole and experience Oakland. And now I might have to make one more pilgrimage out there, man. Not only do I miss the food and it's a good opportunity to visit friends and family, but you got to go see the Raiders, man. We may have to do that. So I've only once in my life have gone to a road game and a home game. That was a couple years ago when I saw Sonny and I went to the Raiders home game against the Broncos on Sunday night, and then we also were at the Titans game here in Tennessee. But so for this year, I don't know. We might have to make one out for Oakland and then still get up there to New York to go check out the Jets and see our buddies at the Fan Club Blitz and the New Jersey chapter of the Black Hole. Of course, it all just depends on scheduling. But anyways, so good news for all of us. The Oakland Raiders are still the Oakland Raiders. They're going to be the Oakland Raiders until they're the Las Vegas Raiders, and then we'll all reboot our fandom and figure it all out from there. So one last one for 119. Speaking of all of that, I do want to give respect to someone that's been a guest on our show and someone that I've been in really constant contact with ever since our interview. and that is Councilor William Parker of the Birmingham, Alabama City Council. For those of you that remember the interview we did with Councilman Parker, they had a proposal on the table to bring the Raiders to Legion Field and to have them play. Starting off, it was going to be the full 7-game slate of their home schedule at Legion Field in Alabama. And then they went into another partnership with the city of Tucson, and they had a proposal on the table for Tucson, Arizona, and Legion Field. Now, with the news that's come out this week, with the Raiders sticking in Oakland, pretty much that's now off the table as suspected. But Councilor Parker is a super cool guy, and he's still, he spent a lot of time with us on the phone, and he's reached out to me now multiple times and kind of kept me abreast of what's going on with it. Well, when this latest news came out this week, we spoke again this past Monday, and he said, Murph, he said, I know that this thing is probably a done deal, but I'd still like to have you guys come down and spend some time with us down here in Birmingham. Because we had talked about maybe doing like a face-to-face interview, maybe at an Iron game, whatnot. And for those of you that are familiar with the Alliance of American Football, the Birmingham Iron football team, their colors are silver and black, and a lot of Raider Nation has kind of adopted the Iron as their AAF team. So we were interested in doing that anyways. Well, then he said, why don't you come down here? The deal's probably off the table, but you be my guest. You'll be the guest of the city of Birmingham, and we'll host you guys. You come down, hang out in our suite, and watch the Iron game. So me and Mosh are going down for this Sunday's game. It's this Sunday at 3:00. So watch the game, and we're going to be down there. And our buddy Kevin, the Raider nerd, who lives in Atlanta, is going to meet us down there. So the three of us are going to go down there. We'll have some stuff for you on Sunday. We'll probably do a live stream on the way down. Uncle Mosh and I'll, eat chicken wings and I don't know, play around on YouTube or something on the way down. I don't know, but we'll have something coming for Sunday, and then we'll definitely record some stuff while we're down there with not only Councilor Parker, but probably Kevin the Raider nerd as well, and we'll give you a report on what the AAF is like. So again, for those of you in Raider Nation that have adopted this other league, that team is your team, then we'll be Iron Fan Radio for the day. So look for that this Sunday, and much respect to our becoming a good friend of our show, Councilor William Parker of Birmingham. All right, so now we got that. Let's go ahead and get to our next segment here, which is going to be the news. And before that, we'll listen to Andrew DePaulo.
This is Andrew DePaulo, long snapper with the Oakland Raiders. You're listening to Murph with Raiders Fan Radio. Just win, baby.
All right. Appreciate you again, all of you joining us here in the chat. Let's see. We see Bobby Wasabi is in there. Vector Box News, Nick Christopoulos, Mojo Raider, Aaron the Q-Dog Raider, Ron with the Wrench, Coach Randy Hansen is in there. Appreciate everybody. I can't scroll up. Chris Potts I see. Appreciate everybody joining us there, and appreciate you supporting Raiders Fan Radio. This is weird just talking just me and not having Mosh to bounce things off of. So appreciate you putting up with me on that. So speaking of that, I had a few things that I wanted to get to this week in the news. And we had our segment that we've been doing with the draft prospects and draft targets. Scott and I got into a lot of that, so I'll kind of save that till Mosh gets back. And instead of me just sitting here giving you my thoughts on things, I like to bounce things off of him. So we'll save that for next week. And also, speaking of the draft upcoming, Mike Mayock, as a lot of you have seen, and I think some of you are already mentioning in the chat, did a great press conference today in terms of the combine, kind of gave a little bit of an overview of what Raider Nation can expect to see in terms of the players they're going to target, what they're looking for, the characteristics, what makes a Raider. You hear them throwing that out a lot here lately, Mayock and Gruden, about what is actually makes a Raider. And Mayock does a great job of detailing that. We'll get to all that stuff next week. We're going to have those sound bites for you, and we'll break those things down because it's great stuff. And then also, Coach Gruden was on JT the Brick earlier this week. And Coach Gruden had some great comments with JT, and I got 4 or 5 audio bites of that we will play for you as well. So we'll get that next week. But one bit of news that I definitely wanted to get to, and then I have a poll we're going to cover. As far as news goes, one of the things that came out this week is that PFT, Pro Football Talk, had a release of their rankings of the the teams in the best position in this upcoming NFL draft. Now, PFT, for those of you that consume that website and whatnot, know who Florio is and all that, they're kind of a Raider detractor. They're not necessarily, I wouldn't call them flat out haters. They're not like Stephen A., but they definitely take shots, and they take subtle shots. It's very passive aggressive in their reporting. And there's a lot of anti-Raider sentiment anyways on that website. Well, on PFT, and the reason this got my attention, the reason that I bring it up this week was that they actually gave us props, but I don't think they realized what they were doing. So in this article, they took, or somebody related to the website, and they're endorsing the reporting anyways. They took a ranking system that Jimmy Johnson had way back in the day, where basically he assigned a value to draft picks, and then based on that value determined a score. Okay. So using that and some other metrics that they had, they determined that the Raiders were the number one team. If you look at the list here, the Raiders were the number one team in terms of strength in this coming draft. All right. So the Raiders are number one, and followed by the Cardinals, the Packers, the Niners, and then the Bills. Okay. Well, the reason that I bring all this up is because PFT is, like I said, they take a lot of shots at the Raiders, and they gave us a ton of crap about the Mack deal and about the Cooper deal. They were the first ones on the front line to talk about, how the Raiders let the generational player get away, and that whole rhetoric. A lot of that came from PFT. Well, look who's at the bottom of their dang list now. You guys see that? Look who's number 30. The Dallas Cowboys. The Saints are 31. Look who's dead last at the bottom. The Chicago freaking Bears. So now tell me how bad of a transaction that was. Now you're talking about the team that rates overall in the absolute best position in the 2019 NFL draft is our team, and the team that ranks absolutely dead last in their position is that other team. So this just another occasion where, look, there's a bias against the Raiders. We all know that it exists, but when things like this come out, we definitely want to celebrate that, because I think that as much crap as the Raiders get for a lot of the transactions that they've made, a lot of what they are doing is heading in the right direction, and things like this definitely detail that out. So that's definitely a very cool thing and a cool sign for our Raiders. All right, Another thing that came up this week, I'm bringing it up here now, is Uncle Mosh and I had a fun conversation last week in terms of numbers. I mentioned a story about Ricky Henderson wanting to come and play for the Raiders, and he wore the number 24, and I made a reference to how he wouldn't have been the only iconic 24, that there was these other guys. And we started talking about numbers, and we started talking about the most iconic numbers in Raider Nation. And we had a lot of great input from you all in the chat, and had a lot of great input on our Facebook page, where I put up a poll, and I wanted to share with you the results, because this is pretty fun stuff. So I put up this poll, and so in the course of Mosh and I's discussion, we pretty much narrowed it down to the number 24 and the number 32. So being the most iconic number in Raiders history for as far as obviously players go, that in terms of those numbers. So 24 was the one that we kind of landed on because of Charles Woodson, Willie Brown, now Marshawn Lynch, and then once upon a time Fred Williamson, going way back in the day in the early 60s of the Raiders. And then the only other one that I thought was even a contender was number 32, which would have been Marcus Allen, and of course Jack Tatum. So we put the poll out there. Well, we had 189 votes, and 69% of you voted for 24. That is the most iconic number in terms of players in Raider history. And I agree. I think that those three guys, look, you got three Hall of Famers, because Marshawn's going to walk off the field of the Oakland Coliseum, wait 5 years, and then walk straight into Canton. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that he's going to be a Hall of Famer. So you got three Hall of Famers wearing that number. So that was pretty cool. So 69% of you voted there. Some of you, like Chuck McCann, said, I can't do it. I can't pick. And I don't blame you. It's a real Sophie's choice there. It's like trying to pick between your kids, right? Picking your favorite number in terms of those players. But I had some other great suggestions. And so here's some more just to float out there to you. Number 81. Of course, we always think of Tim Brown, but that's also Warren Wells. So going back in the day, again, going back to those 60s Raiders, that was a really good one. Number 75, we always think in terms of Howie Long, but also big fella John Vella wore number 75, of course, part of that legendary offensive line that won Super Bowl with the Raiders in the 70s. So that's a pretty good one. Here's one that we missed. Mosh and I totally missed, and I don't know how, but Plunkett and Blanda. Plunkett and Blanda both wearing 16. That's a really good one that we missed. This was my original vote, which was a 12, which is Snake and Gannon, not to mention Jacoby Ford. But Snake and Gannon right there at 12 was a good one. 83 is a great one. That's Ted Hendricks, and that's Big Ben Davidson. Again, going back a little ways, but that was a good one. Charlie Garner and Fred Biletnikoff in 25. That was solid. I think if DJ Hayden would have emerged and ended up being a really good player for the Raiders, 25 could have contended because, man, for those of you that don't remember, go back and watch footage of Charlie Garner when he was a Raider, man. He was awesome. He was so electrifying, man. He was a great player. Of course, we know, Fred Biletnikoff, Hall of Famer. But then the last one I got for you, number 00. This was, as you'll hear in the interview, this was Scott Winter's pick. 00 is iconic for a couple of different reasons. Just the nomenclature of it, Aught-O, and how it, kind of reciprocates with his name. But here's where I kind of landed on it. Here's where I would think that if anything, it's probably third, if not second. Jim Otto to Al Davis, the guy that invented the Raiders. Jim Otto was the most Raider person ever. He was the most Raider ever. So if Al Davis, the guy that invented the whole concept of the Raiders, thinks that this guy embodied the Raiders more than anybody throughout the history of the organization, then he certainly gets my vote. So I think that that's an interesting one to consider. And then on the cherry on top of it is that no one will ever wear 00 again. So really fun conversation. Thank you for your participation in that, for all the submissions that we got on that. Thanks for voting in it. And all right, let's go ahead and move on from that, and we'll talk a little bit about the draft.
Here is the latest draft.
There's a draft!
Today's our draft.
Watch out for drafts.
This is the NFL draft.
The first draft. Look, I'm entering a draft.
Let's go and pro in the draft.
You're going to the draft?
Surefire first round draft pick.
Draft looks solid.
Good luck with the draft.
They drafted me.
Apparently we're drafted.
I drafted you.
I got drafted.
Another successful draft.
Yeah. Shallow draft.
Draft picks. It's my third draft.
You only get drafted once.
Oh, it's draft day.
Let's talk about the draft.
This is going to be the worst draft yet.
It's our draft.
You draft me in the first round.
Number one draft choice, signed a big contract.
Excellent draft.
Nashville Day. Nashville Day. Nashville Day.
All right, so for the draft, for those of you, everybody knows, right? By now, everyone knows the draft is in Nashville, Tennessee, which is where Uncle Mosh and I relocated to a number of years ago. And so we are going to be front and center for the Nashville draft. And so can you be. All you got to do is download an app, and you will have a ticket to go to the 2019 NFL draft. Now, quick update, the draft app that you need to get a ticket, an electronic ticket, and then you just scan your phone to get in, just like you would at an airport or a concert nowadays or anything. To get that, you got to get that app, and the app is not released yet. So, in fact, somebody on the Sea of Fans mailbag this week asked about it. So there's the quick update, is that you can't get the app yet. We know you're going to be able to go. We know that through this app, you're going to be able to sign up and go just by using your phone, but it's not available. So just stay tuned, and as soon as it's available, as soon as we see anything on it, we will definitely share that with you. And so just stay tuned. But if you are coming on Sunday, we're going to do our listener meetup. We're going to do it at the Bavarian Beer House, which is at Opry Mills Mall, a big giant mall with bars and shops and restaurants and movie theaters and all kinds of stuff to do. We're going to do that, big mugs of beer and all kinds. It's going to be a blast. So definitely come and check us out. And if you're willing to share your draft experience with us, we'd love to have you. Talked to, again, Scott yesterday, and Scott's going to be there. He's going to join us live for an episode of Raiders Fan Radio. And so should you you will be able to as well. We're going to have microphones set up. So for those of you that are in attendance, we want to talk to you. We want to get you on the show. So I know Mojo's coming, and Aaron and Q-Dog Raider and a handful of the other made men are going to be there. And so we're going to hear from everybody live. We're going to shake hands, man. It's going to be a lot of fun. Look forward to seeing you all there. So we have a Facebook page set up for that. Just check out Raiders Fan Radio on Facebook. You'll see our events page there. Tell us that you're coming. There's more than 20 of you now that are going to be there for sure. So we're not going to be alone. It's not going to be just me and Mosh staring at each other. This will be going to be great to get to see those of you that are going to show up for that. So in terms of the Raiders draft, again, you're going to have to check us back out on the podcast and listen to my conversation with Scott Winter, which is great. In fact, I'll play that right now, and we get into the draft heavy, and we're going to continue to keep getting into the draft as we get closer and closer. So without further ado, let's go ahead and hear our interview with Scott Winter. All right, Raider Nation, next up here in Murph's Fan Cave, we'd like to welcome good friend of the show, one of the oldest friends of the show, a buddy of ours that has made a fantastic career so far out of a Oakland Raiders and of soon to be Las Vegas Raiders, a broadcaster and reporter. He's been a part of numerous publications over the years, and we're going to ask him about what he's been up to most recently. You can always find him, though, on Twitter at Scott_Winter NFL. Welcome back to Raiders Fan Radio, Scott Winter. Scott, how are you?
Oh, man, I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me on the show. I love this podcast. I love you guys, and it's just a pleasure to be here.
Awesome, man. Well, we appreciate you, Scott. We kind of knew you back when, right? And now you've gone on to this fantastic career. And tell us what you've been up to most recently.
Well, I had to dial it back. Things didn't work out the way I wanted them to, but in Vegas, but you move on, you go back and you get a job that pays the bills. And on the side, what I've been doing. Yeah. Right. On the side. I mean, I still keep up with everything on the side. I've been doing now a podcast with SB Nation. It's part of the Silver and Black Pride podcasting network, at Raiders Podcast. Is the whole group of us, and ours with my good buddy Nick Hamilton, who's a radio host in Los Angeles. We do Silver and Black Turf, and we're on roughly weekly. We haven't got our schedule down 100 right now, but it's usually it's weekly.
Okay, good deal. Well, that's cool, man. So you're out on all podcast services. People can find you just by searching Silver and Black Turf.
Well, they can do that, or they can find all of the group of podcasts under the Silver and Black Pride banner, which is at Raiders Podcasts.
Okay.
At Raiders with an S, Podcasts with an S.
Excellent.
So they can find all of us there. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, good deal. Well, so what do you think about the podcast game so far, Scott?
I'll tell you, I've done, a couple podcasts. I would have loved to have done a podcast with you, but things weren't copacetic where I was at. I think that the Raiders fans, and not only just the fans, I mean, you got podcasts from Scott Bear, you got podcasts from The Athletic and Victor Fur. The Raiders are doing their own podcast. And so I think the Raiders actually have one of the best podcasting networks of good podcasts. I mean, I'm not just talking about but there are some really good one out there. Of course, you guys, obviously, I don't want to name drop, others, but I'll tell you, you guys are fantastic. We're building up one, and there's just so much information that the Raiders fans can get, and you can talk Raiders almost 24/7 by listening to the podcast and then talking and reaching out to these folks in their email and Twitter.
That's awesome. I agree and appreciate the kind words first and foremost. And yeah, that's there is the podcasting community of Raider Nation is pretty cool, and we've gotten to meet a lot of folks over the years, and a lot of them become real good friends of ours, and it's been great, and includes folks like you, Scott, and like I mentioned, you've been a part of our show for a long time, and so we appreciate always your time and your insight onto things. Scott, and I'm a return to compliments. The things that that you've reported on, one of the reasons that we really gravitated towards your reporting early on was that you were never agenda driven. You were always accuracy driven. And I think that's something that gets missed a lot in today's reporting nowadays. And I'm not going to call anybody specifically, but we all know who the hot takers are out there. But you've always driven towards, what is the reality? What is the actuality of the situation? And all the way up until this week, Scott, when the Raiders announced that they're going to go back to Oakland and they're going to be there for 1 or 2 more years. So kind of give us the most recent and what you were hip to for this week's news.
Well, there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. It looks like they're down to the wire. They're in Oakland. They're really in the fine teeth moments at the moment, crossing the I's, dotting the T's, really, really close to a deal. I think Scott McKibben said that they wouldn't have gotten this far if they weren't going to dance or they weren't going to get married for another season. And of course, when they say that there's going to be an option for 2020, that's in case, let's just say a meteor hits or an earthquake hits. So, a plane crashes into the stadium construction, because right now the construction's on time. It's not anybody who says it isn't is peddling an agenda, because it's on time. I mean, I would say if it was behind, I would say it. I've got no dog in that hunt as far as I'm concerned. I was born in Oakland. I would have loved for the Raiders to have stayed in Oakland. We had this conversation a long time ago. But, I'm excited for Las Vegas. I'm excited for the stadium. So they're going to have to play another year in Oakland, it looks like. And like I said, and I've said on other things, and I'm on our own show, there's more, because the Oakland sued the NFL and not the Raiders. The NFL's kind of involved in this process, and the Raiders would have preferred, if they were going to stay in the Bay Area, they'd have preferred to be over at the Giants ballpark, honestly. But that didn't work out because some feathers got ruffled. Jed York decided to play his only trump card, and they couldn't make a deal that was worth everybody's while. So back to Oakland they go. So hopefully they'll get it done, and then hopefully Lucy won't pull the ball away when Charlie Brown goes to kick it, and Oakland or Alameda doesn't veto it like they did the last lease.
Tell me, so you mentioned about Jed York. It's something that I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I think it's kind of it is ironic. It's funny to me that the Niners are getting sued by Oakland too, because the lawsuit from the city of Oakland that's levied against the Raiders is against the Raiders and the NFL. So essentially the Niners enabled the city of Oakland to get paid by the Raiders to sue the Niners, right? In a roundabout way. Am I off there, or am I reading into that right? Isn't it kind of, they cut off their nose to spite their face in this thing?
Well, and in this situation, when we're talking about Jed York, I don't really have a lot of nice things to say about it. So I don't want to, I'm not that guy that just likes to throw shade at an owner, because, but I look at how Jed York handled the Harbaugh situation. I look at Jed York. Anytime you take a look at what they did to Santa Clara, they sued as part of their contract through arbitration and got $30 million back from the city of Santa Clara, because, they overpaid on taxes. They sued to have their rent adjusted, and all of this was in the contract. So, they're within their legal rights, but boy, they really use every letter of the law to their advantage, regardless of how it looks or how it's interpreted. And in this situation, they probably felt like they wanted X amount of dollars, and they were going to get that, or they didn't mind paying, their 132 of whatever's going towards that rent. It baffles me. It really does. But hey, that's San Francisco for you. Or, well, Santa Clara.
Santa Clara, yeah. It feels like, they're going to have, you know, they have these, they basically invoked their rights to the fan base, just like the Giants did to the A's once upon a time. But they're going to have this fan base forever, a year from now. Like, once the Raiders are gone, they're gone. So I don't know. It seemed to me like it was petty, but what else, you know, I know you want to badmouth them, and I won't either, but it just seems like, this seems like there's bigger fish to fry than that, but whatever. It is what it is. So the Raiders are going to stay. So that's good news for us all. So we get to see the Raiders in Oakland for one last year, hopefully to a little bit more success than we did in 2018. So Scott, tell us a little bit about what we got to look forward to. First and foremost, we got free agency coming before the draft. Ooh. So let's start with that. What do you think some maybe high profile targets are, either by player or even by position?
John Gruden came out last week, I believe it was, and talked about how they're looking for young players, and of course those young players come at a premium. So they're not willing, they're averse. Not I don't say never, but they're averse to paying, you know, the Lawrences or the Clowneys or something of that nature. Which of course, you know, that would be, you know, you would love to have a Clowney, you'd love to have Lawrence, of course. Dallas is going to keep him, and more than likely Houston is going to keep, Clowney, and Frank is going to stay in Seattle. And for me, I went through that list, and I tried to find what John Gruden was talking about, the diamonds in the rough, the young players who they could use that won't be at a premium, but also are young and you know, they might be able to get a value there and get more value if they bring him in. So my first guy would be Humphreys from Tampa Bay. Gritty slot receiver, something that they wanted in Ryan Switzer, and they couldn't quite get Switzer for. He's that guy. He showed last year that with a quarterback throw the ball, he had no problem getting open. Very shifty, very gritty player. He's a poor man's Edelman, but he's a rich man's. And he's on free agency too. Cole Beasley. He's a rich man's Cole Beasley. So I could see them trying for something like that. You're going to get a really good deal on him. He's young, you know, and you address a position of need on the team. That's one. Another one, I'm not going to get into all of them because I've got my own podcast. So I'm going to give you some.
Give a tease, Scott. Give a tease. There you go.
The other one I think the Raiders are going to really look at is Dante Fowler. I mean, you know, you got your high price guys, but Fowler's not going to command the money. He's young, but he's not going to command the money that the Clowney is going to command, that the Lawrence is going to command, because the only time he showed up, and he show up, was in the playoffs. In the regular season, he wasn't. He didn't quite mesh, and it's kind of tough for the defense, a defensive guy, to come in and, you know, just flip the switch. You know, he's not Khalil Mack, but he has that ability. He has a really high ceiling. I mean, this is a guy who was taken 4th overall. He had the injury with Jacksonville. Things didn't quite work out in Jacksonville. He's still young. I could see them getting a guy. I could get Fowler for on the low side, and getting in and looking at that diamond in the rough. They could get him for, say, $7-8 million. And you're talking about when edge players are making, premium edge players are making anywhere from 15 to 20 million. You know, you look at the value there. If you get him for around 7, 8, 9, right in that area, I think you can turn him into that. You know, and you front load the contract because they have all the money this year. That's
great. I'm with you, Scott, and that's a great play. That's great insight there. So I'm with you. I believe the Raiders are going to go to the, you know, not the, you know, the uber, high profile guys that are out there, but there are some flashy names and defense, and especially offense. Is the talk about Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown, is that just talk because they are the high profile guys, or is there any merit to any of that at all? Is there any truth that the Raiders could be a player for those two guys?
Yeah. And again, here's where I take my fan hat off, because a lot of people understand how I feel about Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown, to me, that is a real difficult choice to make. First off, you're talking about a guy who's going to probably walk into the Hall of Fame. So there's a pro. I mean, the guy can catch the ball. He gets open. He has deceptive speed. The guy is, from what I've seen, the guy is a 5'10" Jerry Rice. He has done everything, with a prolific quarterback. He gets open, but then last year was the year that he just couldn't take it anymore. Him and Ben he'd finally had enough of Ben Roethlisberger, basically. And he walked out of a practice, and that ended up being, based on their regulations, if you miss that practice, you can't suit up. And it was the last game of the season. And when he found out he wasn't going to suit up, he left at halftime. For me, that is a really tough situation as a fan. Like, oh my God, we're going to get a guy like that. Because you remember, you're like, oh my God, are we drafting? Are we going to go after Randy Moss? Or, are we going to get a Warren Sapp? I mean, these are guys that basically came to the Raiders and took a paycheck. And then all of a sudden, played better when they left. Not Sapp, but Moss did. Just 50 touchdown, blah, for Tom Brady and all that. I really believe the Raiders are going to be in that sweepstakes, and they're going to wait until draft day for it.
Wow. He's such an electrifying player. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, he's probably the best wide receiver in football, or at least in this very short list. And at 31 years old, he's going to have at least 4 or 5 years of high level production left in him.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm with you, Scott. But so I think that the ultimate answer to my question is, and maybe you have it, is this more Brown or is this more Roethlisberger? Is he not as much of a diva as maybe portrayed? And like you said, he just had enough of Roethlisberger, and Roethlisberger's the jerk in this scenario.
Well, here's something, and I've really been, because my first reaction was, you don't want this guy on your team. But I have to look at it from the Raiders' point of view. Now, who did the Raiders spend a third-round pick that they invented last year on? Martavis Bryant.
Right.
Who's going to tell them what that locker room was like?
Oh,
Martavis
good
Bryant.
Point. Good
Martavis
point.
Bryant had the same problems, right?
Right.
They brought in Martavis Bryant. Now, Martavis Bryant had his own issues, but he didn't have issues with the Raiders. The Raiders loved him. You know what I'm saying? The Raiders loved Martavis Bryant. He came to work. He did his job. Yeah, he had the one, dropped touchdown that should have been just, oh my God, we want to throw up when we see that, and, but and of course he has his own demons, and we talk about the substance issues, the alcohol, blah blah blah. But they liked him. They liked his work ethic, and if he gets off that list eventually, one day, hopefully he stays sober, the Raiders will be interested in re-signing him. They actually will. There's no animosity there whatsoever. They really liked him. John Gruden really liked him. So if they've got some kind of inside information that says this is more Roethlisberger, because unless you're in the Pittsburgh locker room, you don't know. You're it's a he said, she said. But you got a guy that had no dog in the hunt. Hey, what's going on in that locker room? What's going on here? Oh, well, this is the problem. This is the problem. Well, what do you think? Brown was justified? Well, maybe. You set the expectations. I think John Gruden and Mike Mayock, they look at Antonio Brown and they say, you know what? If we set the expectation with him, and he knows coming in that, okay, look, whatever happened in Pittsburgh. We're going to stay in Pittsburgh, but here's how the rules are in Oakland and then Las Vegas. It's going to be like this. You have a problem, you come see me, we deal with it. And Derek Carr is the anti-Ben Roethlisberger when it comes to being the alpha male out there. Now, I'm not saying that Carr is a beta male. He just has a different way of going about it. He's more of a, he's more of a positive reinforcer as opposed to a negative reinforcer kind of guy.
Gosh, Scott, this is why I love your reporting, man, because this is the kind of insight that you provide, and that's an amazing observation that, yeah, of course the Raiders are going to have an insight in the locker room through Martavis Bryant. And I mean, I never pieced that together, and I'll think a lot of people did either. And then also, so considering that fact, if you want to build on that, well, what did John Gruden have a window into over the past 10 years? And that was every locker room, and at least in production meetings in the NFL. So he's going to know he knows Ben Roethlisberger just as well as any other broadcaster would. So he's going to know he's not going to come out and actively, discuss that, but he's going to know behind closed doors what Ben's like. And so, yeah, you're right. So I think now as a fan, if the Raiders do make a push for Antonio Brown, heck, if they're comfortable with it, then we certainly ought to be as well. Scott, that's great stuff. So go ahead. Any last thoughts on that?
Well, now, and the other caveat was, again, late last week, John Gruden said, we're going to take some of that money, that cap money, and we're going to keep it to go into the draft with, just in case there's some trades to be made.
Yeah.
So, to me, I don't see it just that. I think, oh my God, I'll tell you this, and I've said this before, so this is nothing new, but it'll be new on your show. I think, and you saw what last year was like, and I predicted last year was going to be a whirlwind. It was going to be the most active draft that the Raiders have seen, in forever. As far as moving up, moving around, trading for players, I see the Raiders, and people, are so black and white. They forget about the gray. How about they're going to trade? I see things like they're going to trade. Let's say if they traded for Antonio Brown, let's just say. I see them trading a pick for Antonio Brown and getting a lower pick back too. I see them doing those kind of deals where they get, they might not get, they're going to get that extra pick. I see things like that. I see them also possibly trading somebody that they already have for picks. I think there's going to be players moving all over the place because, the Raiders have so many needs, and the draft. Now, don't get me wrong. The first round of the draft, there's amazing players to be had there. But this year is one of those years where 30 through 100, there is a real sweet spot of players. And usually that third round, you have a big fall off. You have a big drop off where any pick in the third round, you're lucky if you have a 50-50 chance of them being on the team in 5 years. This year, there's so much quality at running back and at wide receiver, so much depth that there's not much of a fall off there. You might, and as also for offensive linemen, this is a big, thick offensive lineman draft where you might be able to get some good offensive linemen, and the Raiders need that, in the third round as well. The fourth round, of course, the fourth round is going to be for those positions going to be the third round, in years past. Also, you're looking at some stud linebackers, I just see the Raiders. It would really surprise me. It would mildly surprise me if the Raiders didn't move one of those picks out of the first and pick up second round or third round picks with that. At least one of those picks.
There's so many options on the table, and of course, free agency is going to inform what they do in the draft. I'm with you. I think those lower round picks are definitely on the board to move around, and Mayock and Gruden have both said so, and I don't think there's any reason for us to not believe that. Now, as far as that fourth pick goes, do you think the Raiders expend that there, or do they stay home at 4? And if so, who's a couple names that you think are likely? Of course, everyone in Raider Nation is locked in on edge rusher. So I'm asking your crystal ball it a little bit, because if we sign Frank Clark, well, then maybe you don't go edge rusher with number 4. But what do you think? What are some early thoughts, at least?
I mean, you make a good point there. If like a Frank Clark doesn't get tagged or something like that, but I doubt that. I don't think a high prolific edge rusher is coming out of free agency. I think your best bet would be like a Fowler, and you're still having to draft somebody if you take Fowler, because Fowler's a work in progress. He's almost there, but I would still want to take somebody. That might take some pressure off number 4, because there are a lot of people that you can take in this draft that can get after the quarterback later in the first round or early in the second round. So if you wanted to go after a guy like White, the linebacker, right? Yeah. Everybody's looking at the linebacker, and this is the one year Reggie's no longer there. the philosophy of taking that linebacker and that's a Ron Wolf-esque thing. You don't take linebackers and running backs in the first round because their value's not there. They have to be so far above everybody else for you to take that position, like a Bo Jackson. They have to be a generational player at that position for you to take that pick because they take too many hits. And, that's Ron Wolf mentality. Reggie followed it to a T. This year could be different. They could take that linebacker. They might say, you know what? We can take that linebacker. Well, if they take that linebacker, taking him at 4, I think he moved back. But then again, you have to have a dance partner to move back too, right?
Well, and that's where I think that maybe it's a little smoke and mirrors or even a poker game that, they're talking about Kyler Murray. They're talking about, because then if you get somebody that even if there's a hint that the Raiders might take a quarterback that high, then someone's going to want to leap up there and grab him. And then, like you said, then they trade back to, and I don't know what all the teams behind the Raiders, but if you drop back to within the first 15, you could still grab Montez Sweat or somebody like that to rush the pass. And I'm with you, man. I think that's a very, very strong possibility. Again, and that's all assuming that, look, Bosa's going to be off the board. Josh Allen's probably going to be off the board. And those are your 2 generational pass rushers, right? And so, if they can drop back and pull Devin White or what, absolutely. I'm with you, Scott.
Yeah, I mean, and you're looking at, I know a lot of guys, say if Quentin Williams is there, you take him. I get the mentality. It's a BPA move, and he would absolutely be the best guy to take there. But the Raiders have Mo Hurst.
Yes.
They have Eddie Vanderdoes. They have Justin Jelly, and they have
and PJ Hall. They just put a second-round pick into him. Like I'm with you. Like everybody talking about all these big guys. And granted, those guys like Quentin Williams is a very versable player. But are we going to really draft interior linemen, defensive linemen? Like we got much greater needs than that with the young guys, right?
Right. See, you would look at that, and they'll justify that. You've got 4 guys. All right, you got 4 guys there. 1 guy under contract. A re-sign. You got 2 year 2 players and a year 3 player, all of them, 4 or higher picks. I mean, except for Mo. Mo was taking the 5th, but come on, let's face it. He's the diamond in the rough that they got, the treasure. You're going to draft another guy at that position, but then you make the same argument about offensive tackle, which the Raiders have no depth there.
No.
Let's say Parker and Miller end up being Hall of Fame tackles. That's fantastic. You got nobody behind him. You got Penn, and I love Penn. I've hung out with Penn. The guy is amazing to hang out with, by the way. He is a lot of fun. But, he's collecting Social Security out there. And still one of the best damn right tackles. Hey, he's one of the best tackles in the game, but he's long in the tooth. You know what I'm saying? So what happened when he went down? We're talking 50 sacks. That's the elephant in the room.
Oh, yeah.
50 sacks. All right. So are you telling me that it's okay to draft Williams at 4, but it ain't okay to draft an offensive tackle with, say, 24, 27, or 35? I don't get it. Where's your need at? I mean, you got 4 interior guys here, but I really want that guy. But, you got Colton Miller and Brandon Parker, and either one of them could be shaky. I'm not saying it's a panic move either, because you still need depth. If you bring a guy in, you want him to compete with that job. You want him to put fire to Colton Miller. You want to put fire to Brandon Parker. I think Colton Miller's going to be fine. He was fantastic until he took the knee, the arrow to the knee, the old Skyrim thing. Oh, that was a great tackle till I took an arrow to the knee. Well, he was fantastic till he had the knee injury. Brandon Parker had never played right tackle in his entire career, ever. Not in high school, not in Pee Wee football, ever. So, and he was thrown into that position, and he had to learn on the job. And it was a very, the NFL is a very, very fickle mistress. If you don't know the game, I mean, it will tear you apart. And it did. It tore Brandon Parker up. But give him another year to get it down. I think he's going to be a lot better. But you cannot guarantee that he will be. Like I said, I think you're going to bring in a guy that's going to push him there, and also he's going to be your backup. And if you end up with 3 stud tackles, is that a bad thing? Really?
Yeah.
And
because you're right, Carr needs to be protected, and really, regardless of who your quarterback is, nobody does well. You got to protect him, so that translates over. And I'm with you. I think that's definitely in the mix a lot more so than what people are looking at, because when you look at the way that the teams are constructed, and it's nice to focus on the superstars and it's nice to consider these guys, but if you don't have it in the trenches, and especially offensively, it doesn't matter. You can have the best. You can have Antonio Brown all day long, but if your quarterback can't stay off of his rear end to throw him the football, then what does it matter? So, any other surprises that you can? Again, I don't want you to give away everything here, but any other big surprises you expect to see us in the first round?
Well, okay, Reggie McKenzie, and a lot of people are gonna, poo-poo him on this, but I don't. Reggie McKenzie invested into the offensive line. In 2016, it paid off. It looked, Raider Nation was thinking Super Bowl all the way. MVP for Carr, the whole 9 yards. And then Christmas, we got coal. The Grinch stole Christmas, in the form of a cold. Then 2017 took off out of the gate, man, looking fantastic. Carr's not worried about his injury, blah, blah, blah. Everything's great. And then Washington happens. And then everything went downhill from there. And that line has not been the same since. And it was invested in. So I believe Reggie McKenzie made the right choice investing in the line. But now that line has not performed to its, you have a Kelechi Osemele, and I like the kid. He's a fantastic guy, personally. But has he earned his paycheck since 2016? No, he hasn't. And the Raiders are real interesting about this. I have a hunch that they're going to ask him to take a pay cut. I mean, right now he's no money on the cap. His cap weight is done. No dead money. You can pay him $9 million, $10 million to underperform again? Or are you going to say, look, buddy, look at your last 2 years. Yeah, you were injured a little bit here and there, but you haven't performed to your expectation. We want you to take a pay cut. They asked Marshawn Lynch to take a pay cut last year. He took a $500,000 pay cut, changed some numbers on on incentives. They asked Michael Crabtree to take a pay cut last year as well. He decided to test free agency, so they cut him. Have a nice day. You don't want to take a pay cut? Have a nice day. They did it. They did it with Marquette King. Asked him to take a pay cut. He decided no. Boom, cut ties. I don't see any reason why they're not going to have that conversation with Kelechi Osemele. So the difference is Kelechi Osemele has trade value, a lot of trade value, I believe. Because of his numbers before this situation. So you might be able to get a third round guy for him. With the combine, here's the beautiful thing about the combine being this week is all the GMs get together. And if you've ever been to you were there, you're there in Mobile, all the GMs are there, all the GMs are there, and all they're doing is talking shop, man. They talk shop. It's like going to an auction, and they're talking, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? They're going to have lunch together. That's what they do at the combine again. They're wanting to make deals. But, what happened after Mobile? Baltimore and Denver make a deal on Flacco. That's how that works.
Yeah.
So, they talk.
Well, and there's guards. There were some good guards in the Senior Bowl. Lindstrom out of Boston College in particular, who I was totally impressed with watching that guy play, not only in his practices but in the game. I mean, talk about a road grader. Well, that's a guy that you can pull late in the first round, probably even in the second round. So if you do trade Osemele, you get a third for him. You draft Lindstrom, and now all of a sudden you got it. Instead of $10 million on the books, you got a few $100,000. Or 500,000, whatever it is, whatever the rookie wage scale is for a late first, early second. But and then that leaves you a bunch of money to go sign, an Antonio Brown or whatever. So I'm with you, Scott. That's great stuff, man. And I like Kelechi too, and I think that Raider Nate, he's one of our favorites. And he speaking of road graders, like he's a monster, but. Man, just a tough year this last year. Just
last really 2 years. Yeah, you take a look at his PFF numbers. 2016, almost his max career. 2017 and 2018 are his worst 2 years. So and it's a stair step down. So and then you also have John Feliciano, you've got an option there, at least for the next couple of weeks. You have an option there if you decide to move on Kelechi. If you decide to, I'm not saying that you're going to. I'm just saying that the option's on the table, and you have to think like the Raiders do. If you have to move on from Kelechi, if Kelechi says, no, I'm not going to take a pay cut. I'm not going to rework my contract. Okay, fine. Hey, Mongo, we'll give you $7 million, or $6 million. What is he worth? We don't even know what he's worth yet. They're finding out at the combine. Hey, what do you think you'd buy Mongo for? If he comes out, oh man, we'd give him like $6 million or something. They talk shop and they try to learn that kind of stuff. If there's a good price on Feliciano, the Raiders might decide to move on with a simile, keep Feliciano, use that draft pick to draft your young guard as your backup, because now you don't have a solid backup guard. You got a guy that's a rookie that you don't have to worry about because you got Feliciano in there. See, and you got Jackson on the other side. Right. You got Hudson. Then you can trade him to also be your backup center and stuff like that, just in case. So, I mean, I see those kind of moves on the offensive line. I see an offensive guard being taken. I see an offensive tackle being taken, and I see him being taken in that first 100 picks. But to do that, I feel like the Raiders have to generate more first 100 picks. They have that trade. They have the trade ammunition. They have the draft capital to do so. I see it happening. I just see them getting more picks in that sweet spot to get those guys and still be able to get somebody that's a wide receiver, to still be able to go after that coveted wide receiver, to maybe grab that running back. They might not, who knows? They might bring back, CJ, for all we know, on a deal. Who knows? CJ blew it up in the damn, with the Rams during the playoff run. He got crushed. He got crushed in the Super Bowl, but dang, and he's a Bay Area native. The first thing he did when he came to the Raiders, he was only on a practice squad for a day, but he was like, "Go Raiders, yeah, buddy, I'm home, Raider Nation, yeah." And this is a guy came from Denver, and I was like, "Damn, that's awesome." Great. You want to see that kind of stuff,
He's great.
So
the Raiders, running back's going to be fun. That's one of the few positions where it looks like we're going to have a lot of options, and a lot of those options are great options. Like Martin played well at the end of the year, but is looking forward to seeing Marshawn come back. Chris Warren III looks pretty great in preseason last year. Looks like he could be a Derrick Henry type back. Josh Jacobs is going to be around for the Raiders to draft. Like there's going to be a lot of excitement around that position. And then you mentioned people like CJ Anderson for them to bring back. So Scott, okay, so let me ask you. Let's look into the crystal ball a little bit before we let you go. I got a few more for you. So Scott, thank you again for joining us. And Scott, as you can hear, Raider Nation is a great Raiders reporter, and also he's a Raiders fan. He started off as a fan of this team, and he's got a passion for the football team. So we can, he's going to have a Raider bias, but still, only because he loves the team, just like we do here at Raiders Fan Radio. So when I ask you these questions, Scott, I know that you're going to lean towards your fandom a little bit, but I still let's get your take on a couple of these things. All right. So first off, when the Raiders take the field for the first time in 2020 as the Las Vegas Raiders, who is the starting quarterback?
Oh, wow. I believe it will be Derek Carr, but I can't guarantee that it's going to be Derek Carr. Okay, look, I believe that if you give him the weapons and you protect him, he's your guy. He's going to be just fine in John Gruden's system. That's not the fan in me. That's just they have a better relationship. Him and Gruden have a better relationship. A lot of people realize, and he came on strong towards the end of the year. If he hadn't have done that, if you hadn't have saw that improvement, he had a great letdown in Kansas City, but he always lets down in Kansas City, so that's something he's got to fix. But I believe it will be Derek Carr. I do believe it will be Derek Carr, but if he is, I believe that this is his prove-it year too, though. If you get him the tools, if you go out and you get, say, a Humphreys, you get Antonio Brown, you still have, oh my goodness, my head's exploding, going to explode. You still have your guys that are on the team now, and you pick up a tight end. That's another thing we got to address as a tight end. I don't see Cook's going to be an issue. I don't see that. I don't see him coming back. I think he's going to make too much money. So you're going to give him a tight end that can catch the ball and an offensive line. You rebuild that. And if the Raiders don't come in 8-8 or better next year, you might be looking at, going after quarterback. Well, Derek Carr would still be the quarterback in 2020, and you would have an understudy, though, that was drafted in the first round, I believe.
You led into my next question, which is one I was going to ask you, will the Raiders have a winning season? But more importantly, do they win a playoff game as the Oakland Raiders ever again?
Man, that would be awesome. I would have to say that it's odds against. You never know, but it's odds against. I mean, I think a good record for this team would be 8-8 for what they're going to do. But for them to go better than that, in my opinion, they're going to have to knock it out of the park in the draft, and they're going to have to knock it out of the park in free agency. The people that they re-signed, the deals that they make. I believe that there's a good young core on this team that started to believe in itself, especially on defense. You take a look at like the Bill Polian ideology on this, and it rings true pretty well for the most part. Every free agent on defense that you put on the team equals a loss. That's, if you bring 4 free agents on defense, that's -4. They're going to win 12-4, or they're, -4 what their projections are, because it's harder to pick up the defense, bringing in a defensive player than it is an offensive guy. So it's an interesting concept, but that might be different these days. I don't think defense plays as much during the regular season as it used to, because everything is so geared to the offense. But this team needs to shore up the defense. It doesn't have to be the best defense in the world. It really doesn't. I mean, Kansas City went to the AFC Championship with one of the worst defenses in the league. Seriously, they were horrible. How they compensated for that, kind of like the Raiders in 2016. Raiders in 2016 had a statistically horrible defense, except they were plus 15 on turnovers. Oh, they got the ball back, and they got key stops. So there was another statistic. They didn't give up any points in the last 2 minutes of any game. That's a big deal. That's how Derek Carr gets that clutch, Castro Clutch Award, because the defense is holding that team when they gave them the ball back. When they gave the ball back to Carolina, Khalil Mack made a sack.
Yeah.
When they gave the ball back to the Ravens, Nelson made a play. Okay, Nelson drilled that guy on 4th down. Against the Saints, they forced a 53-yard field goal that they missed. These are the things that people forget about, but they held. In that crucial moment, they held. So you don't have to have a statistically awesome defense. You take a look at the Patriots, man. Patriots defense wasn't great at all, but they were great in the Super Bowl.
That's one of the things we were talking about on last week's show about Carr, is that, he's not the kind of player. He's a great leader, but as far as a player goes, he's not the guy that's going to go out there and elevate everybody else around him into greatness. He's not Tom Brady. He's not Drew Brees. He's not that type of a player. But the thing is that you don't have to have that player to win a championship and to compete in the postseason, like what you just said, that there are some players that do that, but there are most of the players in the NFL that play quarterback are Matt Stafford. And so what you do is that you build around that, and you have to have pieces offensively and defensively to complement whatever your quarterback is. And, he's an above average quarterback. He's not an elite Hall of Famer, a walking, at least not this point in his career. Maybe he will be one day. And I certainly hope that he turns into that. But as of right now, that's not what you don't have to have that though, do you?
No, I mean, is he better than Nick Foles? Let's be real. What did Nick Foles have to get that team to the Super Bowl? Nick Foles had some really good receivers. He had a really good offensive line, especially at the key points, at the bookends.
Yeah, and a defense that balled out.
A defense that was great. And when they won the Super Bowl, they had 2 stud running backs. I mean, those guys were chopping off 10 yards a carry. Clemens and Ajayi were just eating up the Patriots. This year around, they didn't have that running game. And even still, Nick Foles still had the protection, and he was still able to, put them in a position to win, barring Ashlon Jeffries right through the hands, at the end of the game against the Saints in New Orleans. But their defense, again, they had a defense that was good enough in that situation. If the Raiders have a defense that's good enough that can get stops, I mean, that's really all you're looking for. Get stops or get the ball back, please. Get stops, get the ball back. If you can do that, I don't care if they run if you lose in the field position battle, so what? If you can get that lucky, turnover, or you can get a good stop and get the ball back. But the offense needs to not sputter. And the car has been sputtering since week 3 of 2017. They need to really, I want to see a game like the Browns game every week for the Raiders.
Right.
I feel like they can do that. And especially if they put the right pieces on that team, and Antonio Brown, without thinking about the baggage. And I understand, like I said, everybody knows how I feel about people who quit on their team. It really is one of those things. I was a Marine. You just don't do that. But, that's without knowing what's going on in that locker room, just on the outside.
Right.
But you still look at, would you want Jerry Rice on this team? Well, we wanted him when he was 36. We were like, yeah, Jerry Rice. Oh my God, Tim Brown, Jerry Rice. We're going to the Super Bowl. And we did. I say that from a fan point of view, from a reporter point of view. The Raiders went to the Super Bowl. I don't say we. I really don't. Oh, it's a big deal, man. It's like if you're reporting, you say we. All of the other people look like you just farted. It's just like they just look at you like he dropped a stinker. So when I'm out there tweeting, I don't say we, but when I'm a fan, I go we. Yeah, we.
Hey, we are fans on this show, man. So there you are, home when it comes to that. So let me before we let you go, Scott, appreciate your time today. And we had a fun question that came up also on last week's show, and I put out a poll on our Facebook page, and Uncle Mosh and I got into a discussion about the most iconic number in Raiders history. And to me, at the time, it was always 12. But then when we started talking about it, was only 12 to me, just because I'm such a Stabler honk. And then, of course, Gannon with his MVP season and going to the Super Bowl and everything, I always thought of 12. But really, after talking it through a little bit, it came down to 24 or 32. But we've gotten some other submissions as well. Jim Otto at 00.
00.
70.
It's 00.
Okay, well, I was going to ask you what yours was, so that's it. So you think 00.
Don't get me wrong. 24, as far as if you take a look at the amount of studs who've worn 24 is amazing. I mean, Willie Brown. I just off the top of my head, Willie Brown, Woodson, and now
and Marshawn.
Marshawn,
and Fred Williamson, Fred the Hammer, back from the day.
I mean, it's a very strong number. 32 is strong only because of Marcus Allen. 34, Bo Jackson.
Well, Tatum was the other one at 32.
Well, 32, he wore 32. Yeah, Tatum. Bo Jackson, 34. Gannon and Stabler at 12, or my favorite, Cole Jacoby Ford. Because no, I'm just kidding. I have that jersey, lights out. It's so bad. I spent so much money after that Kansas City game. Like, oh, he's gonna be awesome. Because my real good friend's a Clemson fan. He goes, oh, he's going to be great. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm going to buy the jersey. Okay, he sucks now. So, good guy, but,
He flashed.
But honestly, 00 is so iconic because nobody can be it anymore. It's Jim Otto, and that's it. I mean, maybe the younger generation doesn't see that, but Stabler's my guy. Stabler is my Raider. Stabler is the reason I'm a Raiders fan. He was my Raider. You say, who's your favorite Raider? Ken Stabler comes right out of my mouth before I see anything else. But the most iconic number to me is 00, because you can't do it anymore. You can't have it. It's the same with that. With God, I want to say, who was it that wore it for the other person that's 00 with Houston, the Oilers? He had 00, and they can't wear. And he was a prolific receiver during the 70s with that great team that they had. But I think of the 00. You can't, because you can't wear it no more.
And that's a hard one to argue. And you can make a case for a lot of them.
Oh yeah,
75 was a good one because that's John Vella and Howie Long. What I mean? Like there was 83 was Hendricks and Ben Davidson. 16 is Blanda and Plunkett. Like you can go. You know what I mean? Like you can find some really good ones, but it's hard to argue the fact that, look, no one else is ever going to wear 00 again. And because of the way that just the whole, nomenclature of it being Otto and Jim Otto,
Jim Otto, yeah.
And that was Al's guy. That was the other thing too, that to Al Davis, the guy that invented the freaking Raiders, no one personified the Raiders more than Jim Otto. So I'm like, that's hard to argue. So that's great stuff, Scott. Well, good deal. Well, hey, listen, man, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you joining us again, and appreciate the conversation. And you've been such a great friend to us over the years. And you coming to the draft? You going to be here in Nashville, or?
That's the plan. I had to make a decision whether I was going to go to the NFL owners meeting or the draft. And I think I'm moving towards the draft. I really did want to get out to the owners meeting because it's going to be in Arizona again. And there's not, other than the breakfast with John Gruden, which was awesome, by the way, 80 minutes. I get 80 minutes with Gruden right across the table from me.
Wow.
Last year. Wow. Oh, it was fantastic. But other than that, there's not a lot on the agenda. I guess that, they'll ratify the Oakland deal, blah, blah, blah. There's really not anything stadium related because last year, signing off on the stadium deal, and I was in Las Vegas the next morning for them to sign off on it, and, got the pictures there. This year, I think it's going to be really fun to be at that draft in Nashville. I was in Alameda last year for the draft. That was a really cool thing. I'm telling you what, these guys, you got Vic Tafur, and Vic Tafur, has such great sources, and you're sitting in a room with Josh and Scotty and Vic and Paul and Matt. You have so many people, and all of them had little insights. It was really cool, and it was and with the draft being so energetic, I mean, it was awesome. I mean, it was great to be around those guys and girls, and the ladies. And this year, I'm going to be more with fans, and you guys, like you. I can't wait to hang out with you guys. So I think it's going to be the draft this year.
Awesome.
Long story short.
Well, I was just going to say, you definitely got to, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you got time on Saturday around lunchtime, come join us. We'll get you on the show live, man. That'd be great.
Oh yeah. I won't turn you down.
Okay.
I mean, I won't ever. I mean, if I'm there, I'm going to be there. I won't turn you down. I'll be there.
Sweet.
You know how it works.
Awesome. Well, we're going to be all around the draft Thursday and Friday, and then Saturday we're going to do our listener meetup, and we're going to do a live episode of Raiders Fan Radio. And just like we got to meet you in person a couple years ago, week 1, let's do it again at the draft, Scott. That'd be great.
And we won that game too. That was awesome.
I know. That's when everything was wonderful.
Yeah, we won that game. Not only that, but I mean, it was the beginning of 2017 was going to be the year the Raiders finally pushed through, and man, we go out there and we beat a team that goes to the playoffs that year
and beats Kansas City in the playoffs.
Kansas City in the playoffs. Or, of course, that's not saying much, but
man, thinking back to that game, we're talking about the Titans game, and Scott was there, and it was a beautiful spring day or fall anyways, but it was gorgeous nice. Outside. Yeah, and Amari, remember in that first drive, Amari Cooper caught that ball in the 5-yard line and drove like 2 or 3 guys into the end zone. Like we were like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
This is going to be it.
Whew, boy, that was a long time ago, wasn't it, Scott?
Yeah, and we saw I saw Morrow make that big stop on Murray, down there, and force another field goal. You looked at the little, Tavecchio broke the record kicking field goals, 50-yard field goals. It was a great day for him. Of course, then I remember the Amari Cooper drop of the ball, at the end zone. But it didn't hurt us, it didn't hurt the Raiders. And I remember being up in I learned so much about the Titans and how they were because when I went to lunch with these guys before the game started, I sat down with a guy that's been with the Titans organization since they've been in Nashville. I mean, I got the scoop on Jeff Fisher, Steve McNair, Bud Adams, how everything rolled around. It was awesome. I mean, if I would have been a Titans fan, I'd have been like, oh. Wow. Well, I mean, the power struggles and all of that, and this guy was right in the middle of it, and I'm like, I'll throw a caveat out if nobody's heard this before. Steve McNair, if you're a Titans fan, if you ever wanted to know why Jeff Fisher went to the Super Bowl and sucked ever since, it's because Steve McNair had more power than Jeff Fisher. And Steve McNair, you can go back, and I have actually done this. You go back to YouTube, look at some of the plays. Steve McNair would pretend that the radio was out when he didn't like a play.
Oh.
And yeah, he would pretend like he would go blah, blah, blah. And anytime Jeff Fisher would go to Bud Adams and say, I can't do this with McNair. Bud Adams would go, he's going, you're going before he does. So, okay, well, McNair was pretty much the offensive coordinator of that team going, on the field. And it was really kind of cool. And it gives you more respect for what McNair was as a quarterback. Cause he's a great quarterback and whatnot, but that's just a Titans thing. It was like, what? I was like, really? He's like, yeah. Cause we were talking about Jeff Fisher and how bad look at how bad he's done since. Well, he's done bad because, as soon as McNair was gone, he got control. He won Bud Adams over the president, the GM. And so you saw Wycheck go, he got rid of all the great players and just tanked the team. But he got all of his guys in there and they were bad. Like, oh my God. These are the things you learn. I'm sure when you went to Mobile and you got a chance to be around and you hear things. You hear things.
Yeah.
You hear stories.
Uh-huh.
You hear stories and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I heard that. Really?
That was one of my biggest takeaways of the event was just lingering in the lobby. And because I was by myself, so I didn't have we had our spot on Radio Row, but outside of that, I didn't have like a home base or like somebody to so I just kind of wandered around and I would just, I would listen to the scouts, interview Drew Lock and talk, and they were scripting plays on like notebook paper. Like they would give him a scenario and be like, okay, now draw that out. Just like you see in Gruden's old quarterback camp show where he would give the quarterbacks a scenario and then have them go up to the board and diagram it and all that. They were doing that like right there in the lobby. And I was like, it was fascinating to me. Yeah. I was just kind of lingering around, like you said, and just listening to Drew Rosenhaus talk to John Lynch and listen to it was just, it really was. That was to me was the most, especially for somebody who, like I said, I've said numerous times, I'm just a fan, man. And so for me to be in that environment where it's like a bunch of media people, a bunch of scouts, a bunch of players, and a bunch of coaches and general managers, which one of these is not like the other? Well, it was me. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it was like everything was fascinating to me because it was a complete insight into that world that I've been a fan of since I could, since I knew it was a thing. So yeah, I'm with you, Scott. That was the best part of it, was just sitting back and taking it all in and listening to those conversations. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a whole different side of things. And then you're like, as a fan, I'm like this, but then this is what they said. Ooh, this different. What I thought, like I didn't know they were talking about. Now, instead of taking a look at things on the surface, you don't anymore. You're like, the Raiders in this situation, you don't in finding a home, for this season. You're like, well, on paper it looks really bad. Of course, the Raiders are going to come out with egg on their face regardless. But now from being, and you hear all these people talk in the background and blah, blah, blah. You're like, man, there is so much more going on to this than there is just. Oh, absolutely. Like what? And I always suspected that, that it's a crafted message, whatever we get as fans. There's so much that goes on within the walls of Alameda that we're never exposed to, and we shouldn't be. Just like with any company, and then let's face it, the NFL is a privately run organization and business. Just like with any company, they're not going to let you know what happens in their boardroom when they have meetings and whatnot. Not all that stuff comes out, and the only reason that the salary information and all that stuff comes out is because it has to be public in order to be public facing to make everything a level playing field in terms of the old days when there was a gambling aspect and all that. So that's the only reason that this stuff is public record. Otherwise, they're going to keep under wraps as much as they possibly can until they absolutely have to reveal it. So I always kind of knew that. But then when you get behind those closed doors and there were closed doors behind the closed doors. So there's even sections of that stuff that even being credentialed and things that I couldn't get to, but just that first level in that first thing, you're right. It opens your eyes tremendously to it. And, I'm looking forward to doing it again. I can't wait to get back to it. And you're right. I feel like the first time it was because it was overwhelming and I was just overstimulated the whole time. I feel like next time, like now that I can now I'll be able to absorb a little bit more of it and not just be like blinded by the idea that I'm, hanging around with these people that I normally just see on TV all the time.
Yeah. And it tempers, you're still going to be a fan. You're always going to be a fan. We had this conversation a long time ago. I'm a fan. We're fans for fans for fans. And then you see all that and you're like, oh, crap. There's a little bit difference to it. Oh,
yeah.
You can't unsee it, though. You can't. There's so much of this. You start seeing it, you can't unsee it. And, and I love you guys. And I love that your fan attitude. And, this is Raider fan, radio. But then if you get into that, you're like, oh, I don't see things like it as a fan anymore. It takes it away. It takes the awe, it's like looking at behind the curtain and there's the wizard, and it's just the guy from Kansas.
Well, that was so. I one more thing on that. I sat down with Alexa Stabler, and I had a chance to interview her. We've interviewed her before, and we got to do one in person at the Senior Bowl, and she was so nice. And after our interview, we ended up talking for like another 15, 20 minutes there when the mics weren't on, and basically she was just kind of asking me about what I thought and everything, and I said, I told her a similar thing like what I just told you. I said, I feel like a little bit of a fish out of water that here are amongst all these people that I look up to and as a fan and I see on TV and whatnot. She says, you're not a fish out of water. She goes, you're here. You belong here. You worked hard to get where you're at. And
right.
Everybody's just human beings. Everyone's just kind of, and she really kind of like, it was such a nice thing for her to say, cause it kind of elevated me a little bit. And then it kind of regulated that. Look, it was just, this is just football business. This is it. It's just, you know what I mean? Like I'm in corporate boardrooms for my day job all the time. Well, that's all this is. It's just corporate boardrooms for football.
Yep.
It's just a different business. That's all the thing is. So when hearing her say that, it really kind of, like I said, I don't know, it just made me kind of rationalize it in my brain a little bit better. Cause you're right, Scott. It is, once you kind of get an insight to it, it takes on a little bit different of a meaning. And so anyways, but all that said, that's one of the reasons that we still, Scott, and I'll brag on you forever. We appreciate your reporting. You never lost sight of where you came from, and despite all the different amazing opportunities that you've created for yourself. And we appreciate your Raider fandom, appreciate your Raider reporting. And man, I look forward to having you back on again on Raiders Fan Radio soon, my friend.
Well, I'll be on anytime you ask me, as long as, I'm not working or something, as long as I can, I will, because you guys, and for those who don't know, if you guys haven't listened to the show for a long time, this was the first podcast that I was on. I had been on Will to Win, for their little YouTube thing, which was fantastic. But you guys were the first to pull me onto a podcast, and I'll never forget that you guys, I wasn't somebody I was still Carolina Raider fan back then.
Yeah. But you were on point though, and that's one of the things about you, Scott, is that, despite just being a great Raider fan and being fun to talk to and all that, your accuracy in your reporting has always been top notch all the way from back then to it is to today. And so I hope Raider Nation recognizes that and supports your new stuff that you got going on with Silver and Black Turf. And
you never know. I think I'm pretty sure I'm going to get back to writing, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be with somebody with a brand that's really cool. And I can't wait to do that again too. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, good deal, my friend. Well, hey, we'll see you at the draft, man. We'll see you here in just a couple of months. I'll be in touch and let you know all the details of where we're going to be at and what times and all that good stuff. But I look forward to seeing you down there and having you join us live.
Excellent.
And for those of you on the YouTube, you're going to have to go check that out later. In the meantime, it is time now for my favorite segment, both of our favorite segments here on the show, and that is the Sea Fans Mailbag. As soon as I can find Uncle Mosh's button, here it is.
There he is, fading, looking. He's under the gun. He's tied, he throws. It is.
Appreciate you all joining us live here on the YouTubes. If you ever want to check us out live, it's youtube.com/Murph's Fan Cave. And definitely jump in and join us in the chat. Some great talk in there tonight. Appreciate you all doing that. Mojo Raider, Aaron the Q-Dog Raider, Running Bear, Eye Patch, Bobby Wasabi. Who else is in there? Juan Herrera's in there. I can't scroll up, but I appreciate all of you joining us as always for a live episode of Raiders Fan Radio. All right, so see you fans mailbag. All you got to do is call 909-345-3346. That's 909-345-3346. Excuse me. And leave us a message, and we'll play your message on the show. And if you leave a message and we play your message 3 times, then you become what we call a made man. So if you want to get made, call that number and leave us a message, and we'll play that again 3 times and we'll denote you made man. And we do have one of those tonight. But before we get to that, there's a made man of the made men. We call him the Capo, and he is Aaron the Q-Dog Raider. And you know, Aaron often shouts out somebody that's an indirect, we'll call it, part of our show, and that is my little mini visage. Let me get him here. For those in the YouTube crowd there it is. That is Lil Murph, and he was made by Monster Mash Ken, a good friend of the show. Monster Mash Ken made this Lil Murph, and Lil Murph has a pull string. And he'll make noise when you activate him, and so Capo Aaron shouts him out every once in a while, and Lil Murph's got something back for you, Capo.
Oh, hi, I'm Little Murph. Here at Raiders Fan Radio, if you call the show 3 times, I said 1, 2, 3 times, and get your message played, we will call you a made man. Every crew needs a capo, and the made man of our made men is Aaron the Q-Dog Raider.
Greetings, Aaron Q-Dog Raider coming to you once again from the east side. Murph, Mosh, Sonny. That little Murph, I swear to God, he's a genius. Love him, man. But anyway, let's go ahead and talk about what's going on this past week. You know, you hear all the time by these pundits talking about the dumpster fire that is the Oakland Raiders. And congratulations for the Oakland Raiders tying down the Oakland Alameda Coliseum once again in order to make that their home for 2019. But, you know, what's going on with the Steelers? Let's talk about them for a while. Since I'm living up here in the belly of the beast in Steeler country, they let Lev Bell walk for virtually nothing. Yet we catch hell because he who shall not be named was traded for multiple first-round draft picks to the Chicago Bears. I mean, I just don't see the equity in that whole proposition. I mean, they got to come correct. And not to mention, I mean, what's going on with Antonio Brown? I mean, you talk about distraction. This guy is the quintessential distraction, yet we have none of that on the Raiders. Everybody that could have possibly been a distraction, and what's up, Crab? They got dealt with, because you know what? We are now a disciplined organization, and the seeds were sown whenever Reggie and our wonderful owner, the new Mr. Davis 2.0, took the helm. But now I want to turn and make a hard shift to the Patriots. Let's talk about the Patriots and all of their scandals. You talk about America's team since 2001, but they've had Deflategate. We all know what happened with that. They've had deception whenever a week prior to Deflategate, way back whenever they were playing in the playoffs against the Ravens, and they had all of those questionable and shady and quick and ill-timed substitutions in order to keep the Ravens off balance before they advanced to the AFC Championship game against the Colts for Deflategate. Then you had Spygate, where they were repeatedly from 2002 to 2007 continue to videotape all of the walkthroughs for their opponents, especially in the playoffs and in the regular season, and only a slap on the wrist to Belichick for $500,000. Then they had the snowplow game back in 1982, where they allowed a furloughed convict to come out there with a little bitty John Deere tractor with a brush guard and brush off the spot in a snow-driven game in order for the game-winning field goal to be had. And Don Shula, the coach, called that, what did he say? Let me make sure that I've got this quote. He called it the most unfair act ever. And the game was 3-0. Aaron Hernandez, a former Patriot who had multiple scrapes with the league's substance abuse policy, but they allowed this clown to keep on coming to the facility, attend team events, even though he was suspended from game play. And then he was allowed to come to the team facilities and work out up to the day to where he was taken away in handcuffs for the murder of Odin Lloyd. Then you got the obscure mascot solicitation. I'll get more to solicitation here at the end of the call. Mascot Robert Sormanti, back in December 2009, was arrested in Rhode Island for prostitution solicitation. Then you got the cheerleader swastika gate. Yeah, very unheard of, but I'm going to go ahead and bring it to light now. In November 2008, a Patriots cheerleader by the name of Caitlin Davis drew swastikas on a drunken friend, and whenever it came to light, since this went viral back there in 2008, Robert Kraft, who's a member of the Anti-Defamation League, quickly fired this young lady. Then you got Brady Bolts. Brady left his pregnant girlfriend back in 2007, as a matter of fact, February 19, 2007, right after Valentine's Day, for his current wife, Gisele Bundchen. Then you got the Tuck Rule. We already know about what's up with that. Enough said. And then finally, we've got Tuggate. Patriots owner this past week, Robert Kraft, a billionaire, was busted in a strip mall receiving certain favors in a prostitution and human trafficking ring down there at the strip mall in Florida. I mean, come on, man. You're a billionaire. You got to pay for it. I mean, this guy obviously has no game. I mean, he didn't get busted in a brothel. He didn't get busted in a hotel. This man got busted in a strip mall rubbing tugs. And you mean to tell me, I mean, just no class. So anybody that wants to cast shade, you know what I'm saying, cast aspersions on our beloved Raider organization, need to fall back because, I mean, teams that are holier than thou, they need to, you know what I'm saying, step off the scene with all of their BS. That's all I got for this week. This goes out to the made men. The hit list, of course, our punter, he can stay on it.
Great call, as always, Aaron. Appreciate the call from the Capo. He's Aaron, the Q-Dog Raider. We always feature his call first here on Raiders Fan Radio. So, you know, I love it. I was just thinking, I don't know why it just rang with me this week, but, you know, you've had, Aaron's had the punter on his hit list for a little while now, Johnny Townsend. And, you know, it was like we had Marquette King, who's on my hit list for a while. And it's like, our poor punters, man. And ever since Leckler left, our punters cannot get off the hit list, man. We need, you know what? We screwed up. We should have drafted J.K. Scott, who is Alexis Stabler's client from Alabama. We should have drafted him, and he could have been our punter, and then we would have been fine. This would all had a nice, poetic ring to it. But instead, we're stuck with Johnny Townsend. But man, I'm with you on that too. You know, it's just another. You know, we get a lot of crap, man, and we have for a long time, and you know, all the way back from, you know, of course, when you don't win, you're an easy target. You know, it's easy to point fingers at the Raiders. It's easy to pick on the Raiders. It was easy to call Al the Crypt Keeper and to say he was out of touch and make fun of Mark's haircut and blah, 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 blah. It's easy to do all that stuff when you don't win. It's harder because to make fun of the Patriots because it's easy for us because we're Raider fans, but it's harder because they rattle off championships. So despite all this crazy dysfunction, it almost like it gets lost in it. Because you're right, Q-Dog. I mean, there's tons of controversy around this team, but they're able to just brush it off. And that's actually, I hate to give them any kudos here, but that's a testament to the organization that they are able to brush it off, that these things don't fester and turn into the, quote, distraction that we hear so much talk about. You know, when you look at the way that any of the dysfunction that happened when Pittsburgh, I mean, you look at the way that all this has turned out for that team versus the way that things like this would have happened in New England, where they do just shake it off and move on. But as far as like holding them to a different standard than us, I agree with you. And the only reason why is because we don't win, you know? So I think that, and I hope that that problem will take care of itself as the Raiders start to run off some wins and we return to respectability this year. So appreciate Q-Dog Raider as always. And next up, we're going to go to an email. Also in the Sea of Fans mailbag, we accept your emails. Send them to us at show@RaidersFanRadio.com, and we will read your emails on the air, especially for those of you that are international listeners, like Paul, our buddy in Shropshire, what we call Mississippi. He's actually in Shropshire, England, but it's west of Birmingham, so it's like, haha, right? So it's good. So west of Birmingham is Mississippi here in the States. So he calls it Shropshire, Mississippi, which is good. Anyway, Paul says, good evening, my friends. Hope all is well on your side of the pond. Probably the most important draft in recent Raiders history is almost here. I agree. I've listened to wise folks like yourselves, I don't know about that, and Mikey, and watched some excellent videos that Watts Raider definitely is wise, as Raiders put together, and I have my short list of who I would like us to pick. I'm looking forward now to this weekend's Combine to take a closer look. I am too, Paul. The Combine is one of my favorite events. It's one of the best to nap to. Aside from the Masters and regular season baseball, you can get a killer nap watching the Combine. And then when you wake up, you just rewind it. However, as important as the draft is, I firmly believe that free agency and who we decide to retain could be more important. I agree. For example, I'd like to keep Jared Cook, but if they choose not to, it changes the dynamic of things. Same with beast mode. It's a tough job for Gruden and Mayock to get everything they want at the first time of asking, so we may need to be patient for a while. Exciting though, isn't it? Yes, it absolutely is. This is probably the most crucial offseason we've had as Raider Nation. I don't know, since I don't know when. I mean, I'm trying to think back, probably since the last time Gruden was around, those years that we signed a lot of those premier free agents like Rod Woodson and Charlie Garner and Jerry Rice. And since that era and those signings, I mean, this is probably, because this is what we do now is going to define us for the next 5 years at a minimum, right? I mean, aside from what maybe the Jamarcus year, when we drafted a quarterback first overall, that was pretty defining. So aside, and that really, the ramifications of that lasted how long? 5 years? So I think that's definitely a great point, Paul, and that this is the most significant offseason, not only just the draft, but in free agency that the Raiders are going to have. And I dig the way that Gruden is approaching it. From all his reports are saying that, look, I'm not in this for 35-year-old stopgaps. I want guys that are 26, hungry, and in the middle of their prime. So that's really good. But anyways, continue on with Paul's email. We're staying in Oakland. Yeah, baby. I'm really thrilled by this because the loyal Bay Area faithful will now get to say goodbye, and our farewell can be planned in advance. Absolutely. I know there's still a few hoops to jump through, but it's looking like it's a done deal. 9 home games left, and then we'll have home field advantage throughout the playoffs. I hope you're right. A few things to finish on. I haven't yet paid a lot of attention to the Alliance League, but when I get around to it, I guess I'll be watching the Birmingham Iron. There you go, right on. Absolutely. We'll be there on Sunday. Being an adopted son of Mississippi, it makes sense is that they're just off to the east, and silver and black makes it an easy decision. The color scheme is killer. Houston Raiders Steve's question from last week about Elway or Manning. Now, I know we don't want to labor this point. We won't. But anyone who does have any interest should always take into account the fact that Elway had the added distraction of filming Mr. Ed as well as playing on the weekends. Well done, Paul. Well done. Finally, Robert Kraft. Many things have made me giggle about this story. Me too. I've been giggling. That's out of anything. This Kraft story just makes me giggle because of everything Q-Dog said, and I'm sure what you're getting ready to tell us. The best I saw on Twitter was, with the 32nd pick in a season's NFL draft, the New England Patriots select Lusty Lucy's Massage Emporium. Jeez. That was pretty funny. All right. Thanks as ever, guys. Love you, Raider Nation. Regards, Paul Edgerton, Shropshire, Mississippi. Proud made man and one-time winner of the Raiders Fan Radio Sizzler. He gives his bona fides there at the end. I like that. Put that on your resume, Paul. Yeah, absolutely. Made man and winner of the Sizzler Award. Great job. So speaking of Sizzler, for those of you that don't know what the Sizzler is,
Sizzler.
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 Sizzler. Sizzler.
Sizzler.
Sizzler.
So the Sizzler is the award that we give to the best call or email of the week. And Paul won it last week with his fantastic email. Paul sends us a lot of fantastic emails, but last week got the attention of the one and only Uncle Mosh, and he was awarded the Sizzler. So we're going to listen to our calls for this week. And this is the first time I've done this. I'll be picking the Sizzler. So this ought to be interesting. First up, let's go to our buddy Alex in Tucson, Arizona.
Uncle Mosh, Murph, this is Alex Sandoval from Tucson, Arizona. Calling in today, I have 3 questions and I want to get started on. I want to discuss the future of the Raiders at the quarterback position. Before I go on, I'd like to say that I think Derek Carr is a good man on and off the field. He has a great heartfelt story on his journey to the NFL, and I think he does represent the Raiders well. And these next statements and questions are purely from my evaluation of Derek Carr. I'm trying to leave my feelings out of it, and it's really hard because I do like Derek Carr, but here goes. I'm labeling Derek Carr as a mediocre quarterback at this point. I don't think that he's reached his full potential. Can I go over the comparison between 2016 and 2018 season? Obviously, the records are different. We went 12-3 that year. This year, we went 4-12. Completion rate is pretty even. Attempts are pretty even. Interceptions, we had 6 in 2016, 10 this year. The biggest difference, I would say, would be the touchdowns. I don't feel like Derek Carr has the weapons that we had then, and he's definitely been sacked more, almost triple the amount of times, or I think more than triple the amount of times, with 51 sacks this year, 16 men. We've only had one winning season in the past 5 years. You know, for as good as Derek Carr is, that's really, really crazy. Our record is 32-46. The first question I want to ask you, is this his fault? Is this the coach's fault? Is this his team's fault? Or is it a mix of those three? Question number 2, realistically, do you think that Derek Carr is set up for success in 2019? Question number 3, at what point do the Raiders need to put their feelings aside and move on from Derek Carr, should he not perform in 2019? Hope to hear some feedback about this. Have a good day and look forward to hearing from the show. Thanks, bye.
All right, Alex, appreciate the phone call as usual. That was Alex had a little bit in a mix-up of his call, so if a little bit of that sounds familiar to you from the things that he asked about last week, then that's the reason why. But there's a couple of newer things in there, newer points that he had. First off, during his call, I chuckled. It wasn't at him, it was at Ron in the chat, because he said he thinks Robert Kraft went in and ordered the Sizzler.
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 Sizzler. Sizzler.
Sizzler.
Sizzler.
That's pretty funny, Ron. All right, so but in terms of Alex's call, whose fault is it? Yeah, I think that you hit it on the nose. And, football's the ultimate team sport for a reason. You know what I mean? You're dependent on the man next to you to do his job as he is dependent on you to do yours. And it's a collective effort between 22 players. This is not basketball. It's not baseball. It's not, obviously none of the individual sports, but you can't, because of the dynamics of the sport, it doesn't matter if you're the greatest player at your position in the history of an organization. You cannot single-handedly do anything on your own. And frankly, Carr is not that guy to do that anyways, but he doesn't have to be. And I think that's the big takeaway for me with Derek Carr, and something that I've really realized in the past years, that, he's not going to be a Hall of Famer, at least not at this point. Should he turn into that one day? I hope so. I'm rooting for him. And I hope that I want all 53 players on our football team to be Hall of Famers. Like, I want that for all the Raiders, not just for Carr. But you don't have to have a Hall of Fame quarterback to win a Super Bowl. You need to have a good quarterback. You need to have an above average quarterback. I think there's only been a handful of occasions in the history of the league where a bad quarterback has been to the Super Bowl. Rex Grossman, Trent Dilfer. You can think of, there's been a handful of guys like that clearly went for other reasons. That the 2000 Ravens weren't Trent Dilfer leading them to a charge to win the game, right? Not even John Gruden's Buccaneers. It was the defense. It had very little anyways to do with Brad Johnson. It was all freaking Derek Brooks and John Lynch, right? That's why they won the game. So there are only really just a very small few examples. Same thing, and then go back to that Bears example with Grossman. Very few examples of teams winning it or even competing in the Super Bowl like that. But there are more than just recent history where you have, with Tom Brady dominating the charts there in terms of Super Bowl wins and appearances. But aside from that, you look at the history of the league, it's not like the elite of the elite, the greatest of the greatest winning championships. Now, there are definitely occasions of that with, guys like Montana winning 4 and whatnot. But when you think about the majority, it's guys like Ben Roethlisberger. It's guys like Kenny Stabler, right? It's guys like Eli Manning. Like, it's guys that are they're better than average. Like, they're not the greatest of the great. Now, granted, a guy like Stabler's a Hall of Famer and deservedly so, but the majority of the makeup of quarterbacks, they're not all elite. They're Flacco, right? So they're good enough. And so I think that's what we have in Carr, and that's where I'm going to land on him until otherwise. Last thing about your call there, in terms of the pieces around him, as of today, no. I mean, the only piece he has is who? Jared Cook. And look, are we going to pay him? I don't know, but it doesn't look good right now. So you're talking about the most reliable pass catcher that the Raiders have on offense, and we're getting ready to let him walk. So what do we do? Do we draft DK Metcalf? Do we make a move for Antonio Brown? Do we, let's do that stuff. Do we draft one of the Iowa tight ends? All of a sudden you add in just those three examples. That's a completely different dynamic on offense. Mayock has already said he loves Chris Warren Jr. III. I think he could be a Derrick Henry type running back. Well, now all of a sudden you got weapons around him. Now all of a sudden you got 3 or 4 options for a guy like Derek Carr. What if they draft Josh Jacobs out of Alabama? Now all of a sudden we have this crazy depth at running back. Then everything is not pointed back towards Derek Carr all the time. And at that point, if then he still looks average or less than average and still makes weird decisions and throws picks in the end zone and the balls that go up for grab, at that point, then that's when I think you finally sign off on him and say, all right, time to go elsewhere. Time for us to draft or make a move for another player. All right. I'm long-winded enough. Let's hear from our buddy Steve in California.
Hey, Uncle Mosh. Hey, Murph. This is Steve from California. Just checking in with you guys. I wanted to know your opinion on Josh Jacobs. Remember watching the national championship game, and he looked like one of the most explosive athletes on the whole entire field other than the Clemson receivers. I know the Raiders need a running back. I've been a lifelong Raider fan. And, with beast mode up in the air, I would just like to know what you guys' opinion on Josh Jacobs. Like I said, he looks super athletic. He looks extremely fast. And I think that maybe Alabama could have won that game if they would have continued to give him the ball. Control the tempo and the pace, keep him off the field. Well, thank you guys. You guys have a great afternoon. Raider Nation forever, for life. Win, lose, or tie. It's Raiders till I die. Thank you. Have a good one.
All right. Awesome job, Steve in California. Appreciate you calling the show. So in terms of running back, and he kind of touched on it there, first off, I want to see Marshawn back. I love Marshawn Lynch. I think everything about Marshawn, there's nothing to not like about Marshawn. The only thing he ever did that crossed me up was that thing with Marcus Peters when he came into kind of essentially his defense and, he came off and kind of broke up and took a Chiefs side. That was funky. I didn't like that. My tune on that one has not changed. In fact, I was frankly pretty pissed and disillusioned with Marshawn in that moment. But aside from that, everything he's ever done in a Raider uniform on and off the field has been amazingly respectable. And I thought it was an absolute shame that he never got a chance to say goodbye to the Oakland fan, much in the way like what Charles Woodson did, that famous send-off, that just one time I need it, and everybody chanted Raiders, and he threw up the O and all. Like, that was an amazing scene. Marshawn absolutely deserves that moment, and I think we're going to get that. Oh, thankfully. That's probably one of my most favorite things about the Raiders coming back to Oakland, aside from the idea that, maybe even as fans, we get to go back and do all that. But to see that finally play out better, more than just him lighting the torch, which was cool, but to see him do it on the field, that's going to be amazing. So that said, can he carry the workload? Can he, and I don't know, was he going to be 34? 33, whatever. It's getting pretty up there for a running back, and only handfuls of guys like Frank Gore have gone on into their early to mid 30s and still been as equally as productive. So I like Chris Warren, man. I think that he's a real diamond in the rough. As I mentioned, I think he could be a Derrick Henry type back. Some of you in the chat are talking about his weight, and that's been a big thing that's come out. Well, here's what I say about his weight. I say he's a big Derrick Henry type back because he's like 6'3". Playing weight is 253 pounds. All right. Well, he's reportedly ballooned, and I'm doing it in finger quotes for those of you listening, ballooned up to 270. Look, when you're 253 and 6'3", look, I'm 6'3", about 215, 220 in my fighting weight. All right. If I go up to 235, did I balloon up? Not really. Yeah, I'm bigger, but I'm not fat. I'm not playing shape. You know what I mean? So for a guy, and look, and he's in a billion times better shape than a chucklehead on a podcast would ever be. The guy's made of muscle practically. So, So when you add 17 pounds to a guy like that, this is not a big deal. That's weight that will melt off of him within the first couple of weeks of camp, if he even reports it that way. And remember this too, the guy, we don't know what kind of surgery he had. So he's not working out. He's not, at least not in the way that he would be accustomed to. So look, he can put on, look, back in the old days, especially, today's NFL becomes a story. In the old days, you ever seen a picture of Kenny Stabler in the offseason or any of these guys, like what they look like in the offseason? They all got fat. And so, but nowadays there's an off-season conditioning programs and whatnot, and their weights are monitored constantly. But this is not Jamarcus Russell. Okay, this is not your quarterback coming in 30 pounds overweight and they literally look fat in their uniform. That's not what this is. So the guy's got an extra few pounds on him. I think he's going to be great, and I'm looking forward to Chris Warren III, man. I think he's going to be great. I'm not saying he's a walking Hall of Famer yet, but if he can be that kind of a power back like Derrick Henry, man. I mean, when was the last time we had a power back? Bo? And Bo was really a hybrid, because he was fast too. He was strong and he was like a hybrid. But I don't know when the last time we just had a straight up hard running power back. Like, here's one for you. Harvey Williams. And he was even kind of lanky in frame. He wasn't like a real, thick guy. So I don't know, man. I think it's cool. I'm rooting for Chris Warren, and I hope it works out. All right, next up, let's go to our buddy Ruben in Vegas.
Hey, Uncle Mosh, Murph, Ruben from Vegas. Haven't called in a while. Just watched the last two episodes, 117, 118. Thank you for giving me a shout out on 117 and being a made man. Like the shirts from episode 118. Real quick, Robert Kraft got his balls deflated from the Patriots. And another thing, I know it's the off season, but being on YouTube a lot, I follow the Raiders official YouTube page, and there's a thing on the Las Vegas Stadium being built from the ground up. Little snippet episodes, living in Vegas, I pass by the stadium every day, and I know how far ahead we are, but it's a pretty cool behind the scenes look of how the stadium's getting built. And if you guys want to check that out, during off season and the draft or whatnot. But anyways, just want to give a check in. Haven't forgot about you guys. Been busy with life, whatnot. But Raiders is always in my blood, so want to give you guys a quick shout out. Say what's up. Win, lose, or tie. Raiders till we die, baby. Go Raiders!
All right, great job there, Ruben in Vegas. Appreciate. Let me go to Uncle Mosh's camera over there, because you could see the welcome to Las Vegas Raiders sign that was sent to us courtesy of our buddy there, Ruben in Vegas. Man, really appreciate him sending that to us, and that's been an awesome addition here to the fan cave. So appreciate you, and so in the off season, we're going to feature a lot of that the Raiders from the ground up, the series that they have on the stadium going up. Man, that is a really cool video series that they've had, narrated by Mike Rowe, who's one of the greatest voiceover guys ever. So that's been a really cool thing. And I'm jealous, Ruben, the idea that you get to watch that thing go up every day. Like, that's cool, man, that you get to sit, did you get on a daily basis to watch that thing just get bigger and bigger and start to take shape, man? That's awesome. So please keep the updates coming to us. And I didn't forget about you. I'm gonna get Ruben one of our Get Made t-shirts as soon as we get those in and get those sent to him. All right. So in the chat, had a few of you jumped out on my power back comment and mentioned Tyrone Wheatley. Yes, great. That is probably it. I like Zach Crockett a lot too. I was a huge Zach Crockett fan just because I loved his stat lines. He had like 8 touchdowns on like 8 carries for 5 yards or something crazy like that, right? Like I'm being silly, but it was something. Like the guy, all he did was score touchdowns. Like, he was amazing. I love Zach Crockett, but Wheatley, yes, was definitely a compliment power back as well. So he's definitely one to consider. I'd say that's probably it. I'd say Wheatley was the last real power back, but he was even faster though. Somebody look his stats up if you don't mind. I don't know how tall he was, but I don't think he was 6'3". He was more like a 6-footer, right? Like, I don't think he was more like an Eddie George type build than he was a Derrick Henry type build. There's don't know why I'm using Titans examples, but anyways, you know what I'm saying though. I think that he was more that type of build. But anyways, if someone wouldn't mind looking at that, I'd be curious to see what that is. But yes, but definitely Wheatley was a powerful runner. All right, let's go to someone who's in the chat and hear from our buddy Just Win Johnny. Just Win Johnny sent me a disclaimer earlier this week. He said, I may or may not have been hanging out with the guys in Jersey and been overserved. So I think he sounded fine when I put this together. So, but we'll check in with our buddy, Just Win Johnny.
Hey, Murph, Uncle Mosh, Raider Nation. This is Just Win Johnny. Calling in a little complaint here, Murph. I don't know where your suggestion box is, but I just left the Cottage Inn, and although they're amazing guys and great people, they told me I couldn't join that chapter of the Black Hole until I got on the table and did the truffle shuffle in front of everybody. I blame you, Mosh. I blame you. I just kidding. Those guys were great until Potts came through the window blasting Batman with a boombox strapped to him like Data from Goonies just flying in. Just kidding. They're really cool guys. I had a good time there. I'm glad that your show introduced me to them. And go Raiders. Just Win Johnny. Out.
All right, awesome job there. Great call, Just Win Johnny. Yeah, so Just Win Johnny went to the Irish Cottage Inn there in Franklin, New Jersey, and met up with our buddies at the Fan Club Blitz. Met up with Splatterhead Fitz and Tom, and I believe Chris Potts as well. And so yeah, glad you had a good time, man. That's fun. One of these days, man, Mosh and I are going to get up there, hoping for this next year. We really would look forward to get up there and meet those guys and see the Fan Club Blitz live. And if you ever want to check out the Fan Club Blitz, it's here on the Murph's Fan Cave Podcast Network. All you got to do is subscribe to our feed. You can just search Murph's Fan Cave on any podcast service that you have out there, and you'll find us. So that's on Apple Podcasts, it's on Stitcher, it's on Google Play, it's on all that good stuff, and then of course here on the YouTube feed as well. So so glad you got the chance to do that. That was the first official Murph's Fan Cave Network meetup. Frankly, I think that was it. Well, I know that Monster Mash Ken and Chuck got together at one point, but that might have been the official one. But yeah, those guys have had meetups, and well, I guess we did too. We had our meetup in Tennessee out there week one before the Raiders Titans game. So I guess we've really had our first official one. But this one about the draft, something's different about this one. It's just, I feel like it's just going to be bigger and a little bit more involved with you all versus us just kind of posting up at our little tailgate party that we had out there. I say little, it was kind of a big deal too. It was fun, but it wasn't big because of us. We were part of somebody else's big thing. But anyways, all right. So next up, let's hear from our buddy Eye Patch.
Hey, Murph and Uncle Mosh, what's going on? Eye Patch calling in. It's been a few weeks. I've been feeling a little bit under the weather, a little shagad. It was a little bit longer than I thought. I was ready to call in and ask Uncle Mosh if he still had his little breathing apparatus, his inhaler. But anyway, guys, it's something on my mind about this whole car thing, man. Every day it just seems like it's more and more talk about Carr getting traded at the draft and trades going here, trades going there. I hope it's not true, but when they say there's smoke, there's fire, I'm just getting a little worried. I'd like to see this kid get another shot. Anyway, I've been still listening to you guys on the podcast. Love all your shows. Haven't been able to tune in there on the YouTube because my fiance, she seems to, she just doesn't get it. She's a Jet fan, so that says it all right there. But anyway, yeah, that's why she's still a fiance anyway. But so let you guys know I'm looking forward to coming down for the draft. And I was wondering if you guys had any info about the NFL little app that you got to get. I keep trying to sign into it to get the tickets, and it seems all I ever see is the 2018 app is still on there. If you guys have any information, I'd love to hear if any updates on it. And anyway, take care, everyone. Hope see everybody at the draft. Take care.
All right, look forward to meeting you, Eye Patch, at the draft. Yeah, and as I mentioned earlier, that app is unavailable as of right now, but we will definitely keep you posted as we get closer on that. All right, so let's go next up to our new friend of the show. And, when you call the show 3 times, we play your message on the show 3 times. we refer to you as a made man. I have to check his eye patch. I think eye patch has already been made. It's hard for me to get. There's now like 30 of you, so it's hard for me to remember everybody off the top of my head. I have to look up at the list. I believe eye patch has already been made, but so we're going to add another one to the list tonight. I've really enjoyed this guy's calls so far. Another East Coast Raider guy. It's crazy how many East Coast Raider fans are, and not only is there a lot of them, a lot of you, but you're vocal. I love it, man. The guys from New York, the guys from New Jersey, all over the place up there in the Northeast, but really especially Jersey and around kind of the outskirts of New York City, man. It seems like there's just a big concentration of Raider fans, and we'd love to hear from you. And so one of our new favorites, and also now official made man. I'm going to play the music after his call. Let's hear from our buddy, Rev Raider.
What's going on, Murph and Uncle Mosh? This is Rev Raider calling again from Jersey. And I was just calling to give my thoughts. I'm so happy that the cooler heads have prevailed, and we're going to be playing in Oakland. What it's looking like, just got to finalize that good paperwork. So I'm happy about that. Because the whole debacle with us playing in other places, especially in San Francisco. I mean, the way they were hating on us, that's just crazy, man. It's just a year. So with that being said, the 49ers shutting it down. They can kiss my dog where his tail covers. I mean, honestly, us playing in Levi Stadium and playing second fiddle, I'm sure all of us as Raiders fans, we probably have more enjoyment defecating in our hands and doing a 1980s movie slow clap. But that's just my thoughts. But moving on, definitely excited about the draft, but I'm not going to make any crazy predictions right now because we still got to look at free agency. There's a lot of good love in free agency, Definitely agree with you guys. I'd definitely like to see Frank Clark, or Flowers coming over, maybe definitely C.J. Mosley. We definitely need a linebacker and somebody could do something in the middle of the field, We need that quarterback on defense. But definitely excited about the draft. The way it looks, Quentin Williams might drop to us, but if he doesn't, I would even like to see us take a stretch, and go after maybe DK Metcalf. We can get some edge rushers late in the later rounds, somebody like Brian Burns or somebody like that, or Zach Allen. But that's just my thoughts. Excited for everything. So let me get up off this thing before, Google Voice tries to claim my soul like it's finished him in Mortal Kombat. But y'all have a good one. Always love this show.
You are a made man. You showed you are part of the family by participation. By chance, a man like yourself should make enemies, then they would become my enemies. Showing you are a friend of Raiders Fan Radio, you have leapt across the line. Friendship is everything. Friendship is more than talent. It is more than the government. It's almost equal to family. Be loyal. Made man, Raider fan. Someday, and that day may never come, I'll call upon you to do a service for me. But until that day, accept this as a gift. And don't ever forget, words can hurt more, but silence can break hearts.
All right, congratulations to Rev Raider, the newest made man here on Raiders Fan Radio, the latest one to get made. So the rundown looks like this. Your made men are Jimmy Zebach, Johnny in San Diego, Chuck Splatterhead McCann, Ron in Alliance, Ohio, the Dakota Raider, Aaron the Q-Dog Raider, Red in Yakima, Jim from the East Coast, Yayo in Jersey, Big Raider Trucker, Wyoming Raider, Diego in Georgia, Running Bear in Tulare, Mojo Raider, Junior in San Diego, James in Arkansas, Monster Mash Ken, Houston Raider Steve, Jesse in Kentucky, B-Dog in a pasture in Texas, Max in San Diego, Rev Raider now, congratulations Rev, Eye Patch as I mentioned, Alex in Tucson, Ruben in Vegas, Kevin the Raider Nerd, Paul in Shropshire, Mississippi, 24 Karat Kev the Cool Ass Raider, and Beto, you know the city.
We are Metallica and we are here for your Oakland Raiders!
You know why we are here, and we ain't playing around today!
From The Walking Dead to errant Jedi Knights,
Raiders fans are a rogues gallery.
All right, so congratulations once again to Rev Raider, and thank you to all of you made men out there that support Raiders Fan Radio on a regular basis. Appreciate everybody that's in the chat. YD Marskel, Aaron the Q-Dog Raider, Watts Raider, what's up, Watts? Just Win Johnny, Running Bear, let's see, Bobby Wasabi's in there, Oakland Raider Trucker, Coach Randy Hansen, Raider Beto, you know the city. Appreciate all of you guys jumping in there, Hardcore Raider. I see you in there. I see you, Hardcore Raider there. I didn't forget you, man. I didn't forget you. Appreciate you guys all supporting Raiders Fan Radio the way that you do. So real quick, I do want to mention something about his comment, about Rev Raider's comment about DK Metcalf and the two Ole Miss wide receivers, and I believe Bobby Wasabi there in the chat mentioned something about DK Metcalf also. I knew who he was, being an SEC country. I knew the name and I knew some of the highlights, but really this week watching a lot of his highlights, holy cow, man, that guy's got a crazy catch radius. Like, I don't know if you all have seen, there are a few catches that he made this year where he extends for the ball without leaving his feet. And like he catches one, they're way out in front of him. It's like his stretch is fantastic. So I'm definitely excited to watch DK Metcalf, and I mean we'll see if he's wearing a Raider jersey, especially. But he's one of those guys, man. I hope he doesn't become like, a Bronco or a Charger or a Chief or a Niner or a Cowboy or whatever, because, those players that like you start to like in the draft, and then they go and play for other teams. It's definitely always a drag. So anyways, appreciate all of you as always. And I'm going to stall for a second here because I'm trying to find my show notes from last week. Here they are. Last week, we skipped over our Raiders in Pop Culture segment because we were out of time. So I'm going to play those real quick before we get out of here tonight. And they were two phone calls. So I didn't do anything for the Raiders in Pop Culture. They were part of two phone calls that were called in. So still part of the Sea of Fans mailbag. We're going to kind of combine that with our Raiders in Pop Culture and finish out. And so first, let's go to, it was Jeff in SoCal, and then Raider Rue. And so let's go ahead and hit Jeff's phone call first.
Hey, Murph, hey, Uncle Mosh. This is Jeff, One Nation Only Jeff from SoCal. Just calling in. I sent you an email with some attachments for my input into the Raiders in pop culture. Back in the early 90s, there was a sports card magazine called Pro Action, and they had a X-Men insert, and in that insert comic, Wolverine was taking on Howie Long in a simulated exercise and lost. I attached images of that. On another note, about 20-some years ago, to show how great the Raider Nation fans are, when our family first got its first computer, messed around on the internet, I became a member of some Raider Nation fan forum back in the day, and somebody had posted on there that on eBay, Lester Hayes' Super Bowl ring was on there for sale, but they were telling everybody in the nation not to bid on it because the highest bid on the ring was Lester Hayes himself trying to buy it back. And as it would have it, it all went down and Lester Hayes got his ring back. Well, about 10 years later, he was signing autographs inside a Walmart down by me and ran into him, and they had a delay in his setting up his signing booth, but he sat there and hung out with me for about 2 hours while they were getting everything set up and told me the whole story of how he had to have some dental work done and went to a pawn shop to get the cash to get his dental work done while he was in Vegas, and when he went back to get his ring back from the pawn shop, they told him, oh, we sold it. But lo and behold, they hadn't, and years later it was on eBay. Anyway, sitting there and talking to him was one of the best experiences I had meeting a former player, and him and Lyle Alexander are probably my two all-time favorites. Anyway, just thought I'd share that story with you. I'll Talk to you soon. Raider Nation for life. What happens in Vegas started in Oakland. Talk to you guys later. Bye.
That is a great call, Jeff in SoCal. Appreciate the call. And as I mentioned there, he had a combined, not only a Sea of Fans mailbag call there, but combine it with Raiders and pop culture. And he sent me some great pictures. And so I'm holding, I don't know if you could see it on the YouTube or not. There you can kind of, so it's Howie Long and Wolverine fighting each other there. And I'll put these pictures up on our Facebook so you guys can see them a little more clearly, but because they're good high-res photos there. But that is so cool, man. Like what a neat idea to put them in a Marvel comic. And for those of you that have listened to us long enough, you know that we're kind of nerdy in that way. I mean, you can look over here at my wall over there halfway behind Uncle Mosh, and a lot of Iron Man and Black Panther and Captain America and this, all the Civil War stuff and everything over there. I'd love all that Marvel stuff. And so anyway, so that's definitely within our wheelhouse. And so I appreciate that, Jeff in SoCal. Appreciate the call and appreciate the heads up to that Wolverine and Howie Long in the comics. All right, one more we got for you. Let's go to our buddy Raider Rue in Utah.
Hey, Murph, Uncle Mosh, Raider Rue in Logan, Utah. Listened to the last episode, heard Raider Beto call in and said that he believes that the Raiders are the only team to play in the Super Bowl in their home state. And while I would love for that to be true, neat trivia, however, it is incorrect. The 49ers beat the Dolphins in Super Bowl 19 playing in Stanford Stadium. So they've actually won a Super Bowl in their home market. But that was pretty close. Good stuff. But for the accuracy point, I don't know, I always remember stuff like that. Also, the Raiders in pop culture, I've got one that I just remembered, and I haven't heard anybody say it, so if I missed it, I'm sorry, but TV show called In This House, starring LL Cool J, and it began in 1995, ran through part of 99, and LL Cool J's character was a former Oakland Raiders, I believe, running back, but definitely former Raider, and he had to retire because of injury and was short on money, so he rented out rooms in his house to afford it. Anyways, just wanted to share those little tidbits, and go Raiders.
Awesome call, Raider Rue, and a great submission for Raiders and pop culture. I went back and looked through because I like to get audio clips of these when you all send them our way with these suggestions. I like to try to dig up the audio clips, and I found a lot of stuff from that show, and I remember that show in the house with LL Cool J, and but I couldn't find any quotes where he referenced the Raiders specifically. I do actually remember that being like as part of the plot. I remember that being as a device in the storyline there, but again, I couldn't find anything. If I do, then we'll definitely play it. And if any of you out there, if you have access to that or remember a YouTube clip or whatever, shoot that our way so I can play that on the show, because that's a great one there, and great job, Raider Rue, and appreciate the call and the submission to Raiders and pop culture. We've gotten so many of those. This segment has taken off. It has. I've gotten more interaction with you all for this Raiders and pop culture segment than any of the other segments we've ever done. And we get a lot of messages to the show. We get a lot of Facebooks and Twitters and, phone calls and emails and all that, obviously. But this Raiders and pop culture, we've had movie submissions. Chuck McCann sent us Christine that I haven't played yet, but is like, as far as like part of a scene in the movie has like Raiders in the background, a lot of song lyrics. A lot of folks have sent me stuff, from Oakland-based groups on, so it's been great. It's been a lot of fun. So keep those things coming, man. That's something that I'll never get tired of, and I hope that you don't either. Seeing our team represented in media in other ways that are non-sports related or not direct sports related is pretty cool. It's pretty fun stuff. So definitely keep those coming. And all right, so I appreciate all of you joining us here in the chat tonight, and I appreciate all of you joining us live here on in Murph's Fan Cave for Raiders Fan Radio. We are going to be back full force next week, and then look for Sunday. We'll have some stuff from me and Mosh and Kevin the Raider Nerd that will definitely be coming up this Sunday as we go down to see the Birmingham Iron play live down at Legion Field. Appreciate Scott Winter I appreciate him joining me here for an awesome interview. Again, I've said it a few times, but I want to say it again. For those of you that are on the YouTube, go back and listen to this interview with Scott. Scott's great. He is so accurate in his reporting, and of course he's a Raider fan, but he he keeps it realistic though too. He's not totally pie in the sky. He's not an apologist. He's accurate in his reporting, and that's one of the things we've always respected most about Scott. So for those of you in the chat, I can't scroll, but Jeff Barnett, Watts Raider, Raider YD, Richie Cheddar, great name, Aaron the Q-Dog Raider, Oakland Raider Trucker, Ron with the wrench, the Mater Raider. Thank you for taking care of the chat for us, Ron, in there. As always, FRN KMDRD83, appreciate you. Appreciate Carl Crater. Appreciate Mojo Raider. Appreciate Haley Mew, Raider Jobo. So many of you in there. Hardcore Raider, thank you so much for joining us and supporting the show the way that you do. We appreciate you, and we will see you on Sunday. So as always, my friends, go Raiders, and just remember, as always, what happens in Vegas started in Oakland. Have a good night, guys.
I'm sure all of us as Raiders fans, we probably have more enjoyment defecating in our hands and doing a 1980s movie slow clap.